Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If Guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei Became the Messe. Now before starting, please give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The wind was blowing through the leaves of the extensive trees of the place. The forest night was completely harmonious. The absolute silence was only affected by the songs and the rhythm imposed by the most exotic nature in its maximum splendor. However, the animals themselves stayed away from a specific sector, as if that place contained something very sinister. That tiny subway cave was the main product of that anomaly. It was not even difficult to guess why the animals stayed away from there. You just had to pay a little attention to hear certain metallic sounds similar to saws that were heard in a very creepy way. Deep inside was the main reason for this sound. Various dwellings were spread everywhere, where the central and most important point was a huge white structure that seemed to be a large laboratory. The screeching sound stopped abruptly. A middle-aged, dark silver-haired man wiped the sweat from his forehead as he gave a small sigh. "Are you done yet, Raizum?" A woman with a dark complexion and dark brown hair who was sitting on one of the many gurneys looked at him with some boredom. "That's about to be seen, Kateria," Raizum replied as he set down on the table a rather strange metal contraption that was covered in blood and another incomprehensible substance. In front of him lay the rotting, barely distinguishable body of a woman in her 22nd. In the center of her chest was a large hole where a dark blue-colored gem was connected with a large amount of wires and cables. "Let's see if it works this time. I'm tired of killing humans," the man stated with a slight sigh as he dragged his chair over to a machine, giving it different instructions that Kateria didn't understand in the slightest. "Do you really think these things of yours will help us?" Kateria showed her doubts at Raizum's plan. "There are many who don't quite agree with using sacred gears. Even I have my doubts. You guys are not able to perceive things just like me." Raizum interrupted her as he continued programming. "It is true that the creation of the sacred gears was one of the main advantages why we were defeated. At the time their invention was a complete surprise and a counter-force we didn't count on. But now," Raizum couldn't help but show a smile as he made the finishing touches. "Now we will use their own weapon against them." Raizum's smile grew even wider as he pressed a final key, causing the machine to begin to glow as a large amount of very rare liquids began to be drawn into the corpse's body and gemmed through the wires and cables. "Seeing this is kind of creepy, even for someone like us." Kateria couldn't help but squint her eyes in slight disgust as she watched the corpse begin to writhe as the gem slowly began to glow. "I'm getting the hell out of here. Tell me what the result was once you're done." Raizum waved his hand dismissively, indicating that he didn't care much for her presence either. In fact, he was completely focused on what was happening with his creation. His eyes reflected it perfectly. Kateria stopped for a short second when she passed a hooded man. The look she gave him made it more than clear that she didn't like the subject very much. "Master, here I bring you your errands." The hooded man gave a short bow as he tossed a large amount of gems and other gadgets onto the nearby table. "Good work, too. Now come with me and join me in this moment." The hooded man now recognized as two approached his master and watched silently as the corpse continued to convulse until it exploded in an abrupt manner. "Another failure," the hooded man said emotionlessly as he wiped the blood from his shattered face. "I wouldn't be so sure." His master's words made two watch carefully, and he quickly realized he was wrong. This time, the sacred gear didn't explode. The blue gem began to glow with a great intensity as it began to levitate. The various wires that were connected to it turned to ash from one second to the next. A mass of flesh and blood combined with blue flames began to generate around the gem to the point where its anatomy became less and less grotesque. The humanoid figure was forming at a great speed to the point of transforming into a slender, dark-haired woman. The naked body fell onto the stretcher and the blue flames surrounding her were completely extinguished. Soon after, her light blue eyes opened with a certain heaviness. "Welcome, my creation. I am your master, Raizum Live in Lucifer. I hope we will accomplish great things together." The man held out his hand to her, and she accepted the gesture with eyes coated in confusion and admiration for the one who was like her father. "Who am I?" She demonstrated how lost her memory was the moment she sat down on the gurney. "You've just been born. It's normal to feel strange. I went through that too." Chu clarified, gaining the woman's attention. "If Master doesn't mind, I'd like to get clothes for you and then teach you why you were created and what your life's purpose is." "I'm fine with you doing that, too. In fact, I don't think there's anyone better suited. You're my right-hand man for a reason," Raizum stated, demonstrating his full confidence in the hooded man. "You don't have to say it." Chu clarified with a short bow before taking the woman's hand and leading the way. "Very well, now that I've finished this project." Raizum walked over towards a blanket that concealed numerous stretchers containing indistinguishable things. Raizum couldn't help but rub his hands together with pleasure once he stopped in front of them. It's time to go about finishing the first phase of the plan. Prologue, the moment of goodbye. A large number of black feathers descended at a slow pace. The broken window and its splinters with traces of blood made it clear that someone had been thrown against will. The feathers continued on their way until they fell on broken pews or on the dirty floor of the church that gave clear indications that it had not been taken care of for some time. Silence accompanied the only young man in the place. It was a brown-haired teenager who watched the feathers fall without saying a single word. His tormented eyes and melancholic face gave him a somewhat somber look. Issei-kun. A blond young man who looked his own age called out to him from the lower steps, causing Issei to snap out of his own torment when he looked up at him. That torment returned to him after seeing how the girl accompanying him carried the corpse of a blonde in her arms. All Issei could do was clench his fists tightly and look away, unable to witness the body of the one he once considered his friend. The blonde and the albino watched with some concern as Issei turned away, ready to finish what he had started. Issei-kun, you don't have to do this. Thank you, Kiba, Kaneko. Issei interrupted the now recognized as Kiba as he turned his gaze to face him. But I want to do it on my own. Once Issei turned his gaze back to the front, he didn't even pause to watch as a red-haired and black-haired girl entered through the front door. They didn't say anything to him either, as they had heard all the chatter. Do you think he'll be okay, Rias? The black-haired girl asked her with her arms crossed in some seriousness. Don't worry, Akino. If it's his wish, we have to respect it. Rias clarified with an expression much like Akino's, though much of her attention was fixed on the deceased Kaneko held in her arms. Issei exited the church and walked with hurried steps, watching as the last trail of black feathers was about to touch the ground. That served as a guide to where his target was, and it wasn't hard to find it. After all, she was crawling on the ground as she groaned in pain. The woman's face was covered in complete horror as she heard footsteps approaching her, so she quickly got up with what little strength she had left and began to create a magic circle to escape. Issei continued to approach at a slow pace, listening to the woman's moans deepen as he approached. Do you really think you can escape? If you didn't notice, your wound stopped healing. That means you exhausted almost all of your magic reserves. Issei's statement was instantly tested as the fallen angel fell to her knees, and the magic circle shattered into 1,000 pieces. Please, mercy, the woman exclaimed in terror as she turned her face away, and just then she could feel Issei grab her wings. He did not say a single word. His shadowed face didn't let her know how he was feeling at the moment, but it was enough to see how he threw her fiercely against a tree to know that he was very angry. Mercy, did you have mercy on Asia? Issei's face lifted, revealing an expression covered in the purest rage and hatred ever seen. Did you even have mercy on me? He ran through a loud shout, causing the woman to close her eyes in sheer fear. I didn't, she exclaimed in genuine terror, a terror that only increased when she felt Issei grab her by the neck. I'm not going to believe any of your words anymore, Yuma. Issei paused after mentioning her name, causing a dry, emotionless laugh to emerge from his lips. Or should I better call you Raynare? Please. Raynare was barely able to speak as Issei was squeezing her very, very tightly. The protagonist's vacant smile immediately changed to an expression coated in rage as he pulled her by the neck to throw her away once more, moving further and further away from the church. The force was such that Raynare was forced to spit blood as she drove her own body through a small tree until she crashed into several bushes. Raynare tried to compose herself, but quickly fell to her knees and her eyes became blurry, indicating that she had already reached her limit. Her face lifted in fear as she watched a shadow position itself over her. Before she could do or say anything, Issei kicked her on the belly hard, causing the fall to spit out some saliva and roll on the ground. Issei-kun, please, I didn't mean to do it, I swear. The woman exclaimed in tears as she watched Issei sit on top of her, preventing her from moving. Now you won't use Yuma's voice to try to persuade me anymore. What's the matter? Are you so afraid? Issei's words emerged from his lips without a hint of emotion as he raised his crimson gauntlet, causing Raynare's eyes to widen in horror. Boost, I swear I didn't want to. My boss made me. Boost. Raynare's desperation became more visible after hearing the second boost. I really love you. Don't do this to me. Raynare threw out her last attempt at survival as she was forced to close her eyes when Issei's fist came down at a great speed. Rias and her peers looked towards a particular spot after hearing a gigantic rumble that was followed by a red light shining inside the forest. After that, the silence was sepulchral. Raynare slowly opened her eyes, and the surprise on her face was not long in coming as she felt tears streaming down her face. At her side lay the towering gauntlet that had embedded itself deep into the earth to the point of cracking the ground with great cracks. I liked you, I really liked you. Issei couldn't stop his crying after saying those words. Why did everything have to end like this? I just wanted to be happy next to you, but you ruined it. Issei's statements turned into a heartbroken cry at his next words. Why did you betray me? Why did you kill me? Raynare could only be silent, as he could find no way to respond to such an agonizing statement. That same agony could be seen in Issei's eyes, and, above all, in each of the tears he shed. The protagonist closed his eyes tightly, and his teeth clenched with a helplessness and suffering as crushing as a steamroller. His hand went trembling to Raynare's hand to take a ring. And as if mocking my feelings wasn't enough, you killed one of my friends just for the whim of obtaining a sacred gear. Issei's tone sounded much calmer, though the grinding of his teeth indicated that he was holding back. Issei-kun, get out. Issei's statement filled her with surprise. The brown-haired man was quick to get up and to materialize his sacred gear so Raynare could move again. She didn't say a word, only deigning to watch in utter stupefaction as Issei began to walk away at a slow pace. Issei, get out before I regret it. Issei paused to glare at her one last time, before finally turning his gaze back to the path that would lead him to the church. Raynare remained sitting on the ground, barely able to process all that happened. What she did know was that she failed. Issei took the sacred gear of Asia, so that only meant big trouble for her. Issei returned to the church crestfallen, his red eyes making it clear that he was crying. Did you take care of her? Rias asked, watching as Issei pressed the ring to his chest. She is gone, and she will never come back. Issei's words seemed to be enough for everyone, so they didn't want to torment the boy any further, knowing that he was suffering greatly at the moment. In fact, that brought a smile on the redhead's face, as there was a way to cheer him up that would be extremely awesome. From what I see, you brought her sacred gear, so it won't be necessary to go back to her to look for it. Ria's words earned a confused look from Issei. Can you do me a favor and put it on her? Issei nodded somewhat awkwardly, as he didn't know exactly what she was thinking of. Why are we doing this, Butchu? Issei asked her somewhat sadly as he placed the ring on his late friend carefully. Her sacred gear is quite special and counts with a really great potential to be wasted. Those words made Issei's eyes widen slightly. Does that mean you? The brown-haired man asked in disbelief. I'm going to turn that nun into a demon. After the small ritual performed by Rias, a few minutes passed in which everyone remained in complete silence, waiting for Asia to come back to life. Although the one who was most anxious was Issei, and that was very easily noticed. Finally, the wait was worth it. Asia slowly opened her eyes and sat up on the ground, then grabbed her head with an expression covered in confusion. Asia. Issei didn't know if he should be happy, cry, or just freeze, as he was really very shocked by what he was witnessing. I only resurrected her because of the value of her power. Therefore, I want to save my words for later. Rias clarified with satisfaction as she turned around to leave. Now I consider that you two have a lot to talk about. Issei-san. Asia looked at the protagonist, still reflecting her dismay. I had. Issei's shock seemed to fade into the background as he hugged her surprisingly, showing her all the affection he had for her with a simple gesture. Let's go home, Asia, Issei commented, feeling a treacherous tear roll down his cheek. This scene made Kiba, Akino, and even the expressionless Kaneko smile. Red, don't you think that sounds pretty good? I expect a lot from my precious and expensive slave. Those were the words with which Issei had started the next day after everything that happened. Although Ria's words sounded a bit strange, Issei didn't stop believing in her, and the idea that pleasing her could make the two of them become close only helped the fact that he was as excited as he had ever been. Though said excitement was tied to a feeling he didn't even bother to hide. I'm sure I'll be able to forget Yuma-chan quickly if I have the Butchu on my side. Issei thought with a determined smile on his face as he clenched his fist tightly, causing the other students in the classroom to look at him suspiciously. He sure is planning something perverted. The constant whispering and accusations from his female classmates caused his excitement to greatly diminish. But in order to get her out of my mind, I have to work hard. Issei opted for a solemn look after thinking that, knowing that it wasn't going to be easy to win the heart of a woman as important as Ria's was. After all, he already knew about her Gremory lineage and what it entailed. It wasn't going to be an easy fight, but he certainly wouldn't give up. He was going to train hard from now on, to make sure he pleased his Butchu and let him see that that huge cost of 8 pawns had not been for nothing. Hey, Issei, we've got some new magazines to look at. A bald man touched his back, snapping Issei out of his thoughts. Oh, really, what's this about, Matsuda? Issei asked with a goofy grin on his face, a grin that was copied by his friend. It's a new volume of Magical Girl, stated another man who joined the conversation, adjusting his square glasses that were the most distinguishable thing on his figure. The new volume that came out today. Aren't you kidding me? Issei stood up from his seat, and the raised tone of voice caught everyone's attention. Of course it's not a joke. You know well that Madohama has connections and I have the money. Matsuda clarified with a proud smile while striking a ridiculous pose. Magazines. It sure is one of those perverted volumes we saw last time. The whisper from one of their companions caused the three men to clear their throats as they feigned seriousness. Then I guess I'll be joining you this afternoon, gentlemen. Issei commented with a slight nod to himself, something his two best friends mimicked. Issei-kun. The aforementioned didn't even have to turn his face to know who was calling him, as the yell and whisper of the female students was more than enough to know who it was. What do you want, Prince Charming? Issei couldn't help but show his envy in a somewhat unique way with that nickname, causing Kiba to hand him a nervous smile. The meeting is about to begin. That comment made Issei's disinterest vanish. You can keep the best one, but don't forget to introduce us to the other girls in your club when you have time. Matsuda whispered to him with light strokes, and Madohama showed he agreed with the bald man when he nodded a couple of times. They're great. I'm sure everyone will be good friends. Issei commented with a smile as he said goodbye to his best friends. The funny thing was that Matsuda and Madohama turned to stone after hearing those words, though the reason was very easy to find. Just friends, they both thought at the same time after taking the somewhat direct hint from Issei. Issei joined the walk along with Kiba. The fact that he was walking along with Prince Charming made a lot of girls stop to stare at him, or rather, just stare at his blonde companion. That brought envy back into Issei's body, but he quickly dismissed it after noticing something much more important. Why is he so serious? We don't share much time together, but this is the first time I've seen him like this. Issei thought with some uncertainty after noticing that Kiba hadn't smiled since they left the classroom, adding that he hadn't even struck up a conversation with him. When they finally arrived at the old building, Issei got a surprise he wouldn't forget in a long time. The moment he entered the main hall, the first thing he saw was how Rias was sitting next to a tall, blond man with great looks. He shouted that he was nobility. though what really caught Issei's interest was noticing how this newcomer was wrapping his hand around Ria's waist, and she seemed to be very pleased with that. Not only her, as he was doing the same with Aquino, while Kaneko was sitting on his lap with a slight blush while eating a chocolate. "You hadn't told me you acquired new slaves, Rias," the man stated, showing slight interest in the girl who was on the other couch, being Asia. "Come here, you needn't be embarrassed," he commented with a condescending tone. Don't worry, I'm fine here." Asia couldn't help but blush a little as the demon handed her a very precious smile, in her view. "We're here already, but you." Kiba gave a slight bow to his leader, but it was only one. "Don't be like that, Kiba. Remember that Razor is just like me, so you owe him respect too." Riz corrected his slave's attitude immediately. "You're right, I'm sorry." Kiba bowed some more, but Issei was the only one who could notice how the blonde gritted his teeth in clear annoyance. "Come on, don't punish him so much either," Razor exclaimed with a slight chuckle as he waved his hand dismissively, indicating for Kiba to stop. "Apparently, you've acquired more than one slave, my dear Rias." His gaze focused on Issei for a short second, though he quickly turned his gaze back to Asia, who couldn't help but blush again. "He is the wielder of a Longinus, the boosted gear. I needed 8 pawns to resurrect him." Those words caught the attention of Razor, who couldn't help but stare at the boy with some astonishment. "A Longinus? How curious," was all he said as he studied him with his eyes. My name is Hyoudou Issei. It's a pleasure." Issei gave a quick bow to the man, then gave one more to his mistress so she wouldn't get angry like she did with Kiba. "It's a pleasure, Hyoudou. My name is Razor, I guess that sounds familiar." That comment made Issei look at him with confusion. "I'm sorry, but I've only been in the supernatural world for a very short time, so I still know very few things." Issei felt he had to excuse himself somehow, otherwise it might have been a bit of a problem. "Oh, I see," Razor stated. His smile faded when he learned that Issei had no idea who he was. "You should teach him better, my dear Rias. Every reincarnated demon should know about the Phoenix family, especially about his heir," clarified the man with much, perhaps even too much pride. "Practically, if you said it was arrogance, no one could tell you otherwise." "I'm sorry. He still has a lot to learn, but I promise I was going to tell him soon. Having you here today saved several explanations," Rias stated with a somewhat flashy smile in Issei's eyes as he watched his Butchu lean against Razor's shoulder and let Razor nuzzle his waist more vividly. "I don't mean to be annoying, but what kind of relationship do you two have?" That question caused Razor to widen his smile a little. "It's good of you to ask, since it's not just her, it's also Kaneko and Aquino." Razor left a slight pause of suspense after saying those words. "We're engaged." Those two simple words completely ruined Issei's plans. "Oh, I see. Congratulations." Still, Issei didn't show it. Rias and the others had the right to marry whomever they wanted, and he was no one to stand in the way of that. If they were happy, then there was no reason to bother. All he had to do was find another woman he felt comfortable with and end up getting romantically involved with to forget about Yuma-chan and all those nightmares that still haunted his mind. It was a simple idea, but somehow he felt that was going to get more and more complicated. "Thanks a lot, Brett." Razor thanked him in his own way, then focused his gaze back on Asia. "So, may I know more about the life of such a pretty young lady?" Those words made the blonde's face turn into a tomato because of the huge blush that exploded on her skin. "Well, you see, Issei was also interested in knowing a little more about Asia's life, so he stopped to listen carefully. In the end, Razor Phoenix's visit was really enjoyable for everyone, even for Issei himself, who was somewhat fascinated by the different battles won by the high-class demon. They also took advantage of the moment to nourish the newly resurrected with information, talking about the 72 pillars and their great importance. Although what was most talked about was the Phoenix nobility, or more specifically, Razor himself. "He seems to be a good man, don't you think so, Asia?" Issei asked once the Phoenix left along with Rias, Aquino, and Kaneko to have a more private moment. "Yes, he's very dashing and handsome," she said with complete sincerity, and the fact that the blush wouldn't leave her face made it clear that she had been very flattered and attracted to the Phoenix. "Apparently, Mr. Phoenix is going to have to agendize a new girlfriend to his ranks. You'd better hurry, because it won't be long now until the wedding." Issei commented amusedly as he noticed the girl's blush, causing her to blush even more. "Please, Issei-san, don't say such things," she yelled under her breath as she played with her fingers very pitifully. Issei simply chuckled at the woman's shy attitude, though this was put on the back burner as he could catch through the window as Kiba stood outside looking out into nothingness. "Hey, I'll go talk to Kiba. See you later." Issei waved goodbye to Asia, earning a shy smile from her. Kiba watched the clouds pass by in complete silence as he stood with his arms crossed. His eyes reflected a great dilemma. "Hey, Prince Charming." Kiba was startled when Issei slapped him hard on the back. "It's you, Issei-san," the blonde commented with a nervous smile. "Are you all right?" Issei's so sudden and direct question made Kiba startled. "What do you mean?" the blonde inquired. "Well, I've noticed that you're really weird today. I even suspect it's Mr. Phoenix's fault." Issei's curiosity turned into a smirk. "Did you just fall in love with one of them and the higher level Prince Charming stole her from you?" Issei tried to tease a little, but was disappointed when all Kiba did was sigh. "I wish it was something like that." In those moments, the urge to bother him vanished like the wind. "You're scaring me," Issei commented with slight seriousness as he noticed that the problem seemed to be something really serious and not a simple joke. I don't know if I should tell you. Kiba was in great doubt as he met Issei's gaze. Issei-kun, if you had to defend Rias, would you do it? That question surprised Issei, though he didn't hesitate to answer. Of course I would, I owe my life to the Butchu, he exclaimed with complete conviction. I don't mean defending her as a slave, but also as a friend. The seriousness Kiba expressed in every word implied that this was no time for jokes, so Issei couldn't help but get very serious. Kiba, you know I would do it. Not only for her, for you too, for everyone. You are my comrades and I owe you a lot for the trouble I caused in the church. If I could do it, I would fight to the death for you guys. Issei replied without the slightest bit of hesitation, causing Kiba to be a little surprised. Issei-san. The blonde's surprise changed to a smile. We're definitely very lucky to have a man like you in our company. I hope the Butchu knows how to properly appreciate it. Hey, don't say that. Issei couldn't help but rub his hair sheepishly at such praise. Back to the main topic. Are you going to tell me what's going on? Issei insisted once more, and the atmosphere became tense again. Kiba looked this way and another, making sure there was no one who could hear them. Finally, the blonde leaned close to the brown's ear to whisper to him. Razor is not who he appears to be. Those words confused Issei greatly, who showed it instantly with his furrowed brows. What the hell does that mean? Kiba placed a hand on his shoulder, squeezing it a little tightly. Be ready for later. I'll call you when the time comes. Kiba pulled away, arousing a bit of annoyance in Issei. And you can't tell me now? He questioned him with narrowed eyes. The blonde paused, only to give him the most serious look that could possibly exist on him. I'm not telling you now because you might not believe me, but I'm sure if he tells you then you won't have any doubts. End of prologue. I like to make scenes once I finish the chapter, so it's a test of attention for all those who don't read the bold letters, which are also very important. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be uploading the continuation soon, so stay tuned. If you have any doubt, comment, or just want to give me some nice words, don't hesitate to do a review, since I always answer absolutely all of them in the next chapter. Remember that this is a translation, and I'm far from being good at it. If you have enough time and interest to help me translate the chapters, then don't hesitate to contact me. Any kind of help is welcome, as it translates into more free time that I can invest in creating new chapters. Without further ado, here I leave you with the extra scene. Thank you very much for reading. The stars were shining brightly in that night sky that looked a bit curious, as it looked like a kind of giant cupola. That theory was reinforced a little when in the distance a huge elevator of industrial size could be seen starting from the sky and ending on a road that led to some houses. From that point on, the dwellings and various stores stretched across much of that weird place, and all the structures seemed to be looking at one particular building. That building was a large white tower that lay atop a seemingly endless cliff. The night was really quiet and cozy, so it was strange to watch as a figure moved through the lower floors of the tower at great speed until it finally reached the vault. A vault with very little security, as it only consisted of a wooden door that did not even have a lock. The figure opened the door as silently as possible, causing the first lights of the spacious place to come on, revealing that this mysterious figure was a still wounded Raynare. The fall entered with absolute silence, carefully observing all the sacred gears that were on numerous shelves that seemed to have no end. All the same, all her interest rested on one particular spot. Raynare approached the desk where a completely red sword lay. She took it carefully, observing how the edge reflected half of her face, and thanks to that same reflection was that she could see that someone was behind her. Raynare instantly turned around and pointed the sword straight ahead, causing her eyes to widen as she saw who it was. Did you seriously think you could infiltrate my precious vault without me noticing? The man asked with a smirk, though his relaxed look seemed to reflect otherwise. Raynare clung even tighter to the sword and her body began to tremble against her will. Azazel, I don't know what you're talking about, Raynare replied seriously, watching as Azazel was leaning against the door while looking at her with a half smile. Don't you know, you've been acting very suspiciously all along, especially these last few years, replied the Cotter calmly. And in case you don't know, the demons and priests already informed us that you were involved in a lot of illegal acts and without authorization from your superiors. I'm not guilty. It's something that had to happen, the Fallen exclaimed as she pointed the sword at Azazel, who did not look at all threatened. Aren't you guilty of Hyoudou Issei's death? Aren't you guilty of Asia Argento's death? Aren't you guilty of corrupting one of the angel's sacred institutions? Azazel's gaze became a bit serious as he took a step forward. And what about all the information where you were a suspect? Didn't you kill all those people either? Raynare couldn't help but take a step back as the man approached. Even if she tried not to show it, it was obvious that she had a great deal of respect for Azazel. One could even say it was more fear than respect at this point. Still, she couldn't help but laugh at the complicated situation. Listen, you don't have the right to declare anything to me. It was a very nice talk, but now I need to leave. Raynare took a step forward to head for the exit, but Azazel blocked her path. I see you don't understand the position you are in, clarified the Cotter, who now wore a more shadowy look than usual, though his relaxed expression was still on his face. You broke into my vault, you want to steal one of my sacred gears, and as if that wasn't enough, we were handed reliable information about your actions. Azazel watched her closely, causing a menacing aura to begin to emanate from his body. You think you can get away with your actions. Beginning of Arc Chapter 1, Know Yourself. This whole place is creepy, commented Raynare, who was following close behind Azazel, heading to a place she was obviously unfamiliar with. Do you want to see my desk so you know the meaning of true terror? The Cotter sneered as they made their way down the long corridor of the tower. Their walk was interrupted when they passed one of the many windows, something that caught Raynare's attention greatly. Azazel positioned next to her, watching as the night sky began to transform at a great speed. The stars lit up brightly and the night transformed into a beautiful day covered in light that spread throughout the entire city. I guess you never stayed long in Grigori. It's quite beautiful, isn't it? Commented Azazel, observing the very abrupt and special sunrise with some glee. How is it that you guys were able to create a city like this in a subway place? Raynare asked with some astonishment, being that she never stopped to observe the beauty of Grigori until now. This is thanks to one simple word, magic, Azazel declared, resuming his walk once more. Raynare watched him, only to look at the sunrise once more before following him. What do you say we take a shorter way? Azazel stepped onto an elevator along with Raynare, who had no choice but to follow him. A shorter way to my death. I guess that's not bad, Raynare replied with clear sass, earning a chuckle from Azazel. Death sentences are carried elsewhere, clarified the man graciously, a grace Raynare obviously did not share. So where the fuck are we going then? Her impatience was not long in coming, as was the change in her language. Don't be impatient, we're just going somewhere we can talk more calmly, the Cotter replied. I don't like to talk, Raynare answered him instantly with clear disdain. Well, from this moment on you're going to like it, Azazel clarified as the elevator opened its doors. Raynare's surprise was not long in coming when she saw that the room consisted of a small place at the top of the tower. The curious thing about it was that the room consisted of a grating that was right in front of the elevator, white walls and extremely common rows throughout the room. The only thing decorating the place was a small table that possessed a contraption unknown to her. Make yourself comfortable, Azazel stated smugly after opening the bars with a simple snap of his fingers. Raynare stepped into the strange room slowly, peering into every nook and cranny with much uncertainty. Now I get it, Raynare commented, watching as Azazel reached across the table to grab the contraption that appeared to be a magical projector. We're not in the slaughterhouse, this is an interrogation. I'd prefer to say we're simply going to talk amicably, but I suppose you can look at it that way too. Azazel bowed his shoulders with slight disinterest as he tried to do something with the projector. So what's this friendly talk going to be about then? Raynare asked, watching as the bars closed again. Lately a rebel group settled among the fallen. They used to be just a shadow, but now they are wreaking havoc among the factions, and I suspect you are one of their members, commented Azazel, who was apparently very focused on his task of making the projector work. And if this supposed rebel group has been around for so long, why didn't you do anything sooner? You guys are supposed to be the ultimate force and you're supposed to maintain order above all things. Raynare clarified with clear intentions of mocking the man. Because they are an extremely sneaky group. Most of their plans always work, and when it doesn't, everyone involved ends up dying or disappearing without a trace. Azazel paused for a short second, glancing sideways at her. Or at least it was like that until today, since you find yourself alive. A strange thing, due to the fact that in the report delivered by the demons you were declared dead. Raynare watched silently as Azazel continued to work on the projector, so he was barely paying attention to it. Aren't you interested in telling me how you survived? Raynare clenched the sword tightly. It's definitely complicated to figure this thing out when you always end up delegating all your work. Azazel thought aloud with clear boredom in his tone. Raynare moved dangerously close to the man to then slash him with her sword. Azazel's lowered guard was actually a lie, and that was proven instantly as the man turned around at a speed she could barely keep up with, catching the sword with one of his hands without any trouble at all. By the way, this is mine. Azazel took the sword from her with simple brute force. The Cotter laid the sword on the table and motioned with his hand, signaling her to sit down. Knowing she could do nothing, Raynare had no choice but to comply with his orders. It's time to begin our friendly chat, Azazel commented, who sat in the other chair as he put the finishing touches on the projector. What is it you want from me? Raynare looked up at the large magical circle that materialized once the projector was turned on. I told you before, was Azazel's simple reply. I don't belong to any terrorist association. Raynare answered him just as simply, earning a smile from the man. Then why did you come to steal one of my sacred gears? If you ask me, I'd say it was a desperate move by someone who knows great risk of death for having failed a mission and may henceforth be pursued by both us and the leader of that organization of yours. Azazel leaned back in his chair, his eyes glittered with suspicion. Between the other Cotters, your leader, and me. Azazel leaned back even further, causing a mysterious smile to emerge on his face. Believe me, you were lucky to run into me first, otherwise you would have died by now. You don't know me, was Raynare's curt reply, causing the Cotter's smile to widen even more. You think so? One of the things that fascinates me most aside from sacred gears is being able to hunt down terrorist groups that threaten the stability of Grigori. After all, without good diplomatic relations, then the collection of my prized sacred gears could suffer a major setback. So you want to hunt me down? Raynare asked with a raised eyebrow. I have no interest in you, I just want to catch the circus owner. The clowns will fall likewise when they no longer have the support of their leader. Cotter commented calmly. So you're good at making metaphors too. Raynare folded her arms, watching as the man chuckled under his breath after her words. I'm also good at asking questions. Answer them honestly, and maybe I can give you what you're looking for. Raynare showed some distrust at the words, but still couldn't help but feel curious. And what exactly am I looking for? She asked him with a slight tilt of her head. That's a good question as a start, Azazel stated with a slight nod. What is it you're looking for? Why are you doing this? Raynare looked up for a short second, thinking over her answer, though it took her almost no time at all to answer him. I just want to finish what I started. And what is that exactly? Freeing the world, Raynare answered without any hesitation. So you want to become a liberator, a revolutionary? Azazel asked her with interest. It's not that I want to become one, I was born to be one. Raynare's conviction only increased further after the answer. And give that you want to free the world. That question made Raynare sigh. I don't think you can understand. Are you sure about that? The Cotter's question made Raynare go quiet for a few seconds. I want to rid them of people like you. The world doesn't need you to keep polluting human society. They don't need priests, they don't need beliefs, much less need those sacred gears for you to use them as weapons. Raynare showed no hesitation in any of her words, receiving a nod from Azazel. Very well, you want to free the humans from the supernatural beings. Azazel rested his hand on his chin and looked at her with a slight smile. And what does it have to do with killing more humans? Was it because they had sacred gears? Well, it's true that a human tainted with those contraptions is doomed to be a tool of the supernatural beings according to your point of view. Anyway, how does it feel to kill the people you supposedly seek to protect? It feels great, Raynare replied without a hint of hesitation, causing Azazel to look at her with mild interest. Enjoying killing indiscriminately. Even if Raynare didn't know it, that was the key question of the interrogation. Please, do you seriously believe that a conservative mind would be able to bring freedom in this world full of madmen? Raynare's answer was obvious, as was her conviction and certainty in her every word. But Azazel this time did not believe her. We said you must answer all questions honestly. Azazel's answer rather surprised her, and it showed when her eyes widened. And what was I supposed to have been doing until now? The fallen questioned with a frown. Don't get me wrong. You probably think all that too. I'm sure you do, but I'm sure of one thing. Azazel's eyes narrowed after saying his next words. I don't understand how a person who seeks to help others, who would even give up her own life for that cause, could be able to enjoy killing innocent people. Raynare just looked at him without saying any words. All she did was slowly lean her body forward to emphasize her next words. For me, the idea of not killing all it creates is shame and uncertainty. Being soft makes you weak. You can't be a leader if you are weak. Those words caused Azazel to laugh, something Raynare did not find at all humorous. Of all the clowns the circus owner controls, you're probably the best. Your words make you look like someone so determined to do whatever it takes. I am determined to do whatever it takes. Raynare interrupted him, showing some discomfort in her tone at the Cotter's words. Then I suppose I must believe you. The woman nodded without hesitation, causing Azazel's smile to widen. Very well, then let's look at what Raynare's life was like. The projector lit up after mentioning the woman's name. Decoding files, simulating Raynare's story according to the information collected. The fallen angel looked very surprised at the messages that appeared on the magic circle that functioned as a screen. If you like killing people so much, then we should start from there, Azazel stated as the projector began to work harder. The magic circle began to decode an image to the point where a large church was presented. Raynare seemed to recognize the sight, so she couldn't help but be impressed. How is what? It's a simulation. It's not a real recording. This is tied to the data you provided us with, false or true. Azazel interrupted her, knowing the question she would ask. But now we already know that all these acts are true, don't you? Raynare just looked at him without saying a word. Well, let's move on to the main point. Azazel cut off the awkward moment as he placed his legs on the table. Greece, 1898. The Orthodox Cathedral of Oya. The priests were holding a great appeal for all those who possess sacred gears in order for them to learn how to use them and join God, but you came along. Azazel didn't need to say any more as the image changed to the interior of the cathedral, revealing dozens and dozens of corpses. The scene was so sudden that Raynare couldn't help but look away. Funny how someone who was born to be a hopeless bloodthirsty can't help but turn her face away after seeing a few dead. Azazel sneered at her, managing to get Raynare to hand him a bad glare. Where are you going with this? Azazel held up his finger, sketching a rather peculiar smile. We're just starting out, Cotter clarified, then fiddled with the player again. The attack on Canterbury, England in 1903 that was carried out by a group of fallen angels and renegade priests that wiped out over 26 demons by surprise attack. In addition, they took over 183 innocent lives simply for the sake of accomplishing their goal. A large number of projectiles assaulted the screen, and Raynare couldn't help but clench her hands tightly as she watched a large number of human dwellings being destroyed by the unconscionable attacks. Are you sure you feel smarter for instilling fear? For committing so many murders? No matter what you say. Raynare interrupted him fiercely. I know who I am. A lost child. A revolutionary. Yeah, you probably are in your dreams. But you're definitely good at running away once you do these things, since no one could assert your guilt until this moment. Azazel replied as he stopped the projector. What do you say we go back in time to when you become in this? Raynare's anger took a back seat and she couldn't help but look at him with a lot of confusion. What do you mean? I mean this. Azazel turned the player back on, gaining Raynare's full attention. Japan, 1863. I assume you remember that date. Raynare stood up practically the second after hearing those words. Turn that off, Raynare said instantly, earning a curious look from Azazel. Why do you want me to turn it off? This is the best part, Cotter replied as he crossed his legs. I said turn it off. Raynare shouted angrily and lunged at him, but before she could do anything else, Azazel raised one of his fingers to create a barrier that slammed hard into the fall. The next thing he did was create another barrier to push her back into her seat, causing her to go completely silent. Listen to me, you'll start taking things seriously. Azazel's seriousness indicated that he was already losing his patience, which meant nothing good, and Raynare knew that all too well. What do you want from me? Do you want me to tell you who the leader of the organization is? Does that guarantee me some kind of freedom? Raynare was strangely more receptive, something Azazel did not overlook. It was obvious that this sudden change of attitude was due to what happened on that date. Yes, I want to know who the leader of the organization is. But before that, I just want you to be honest with yourself. I don't want to keep listening to those stupid narcissistic ideas that are a lie that yourself believe. Azazel replied, then paused a little dramatically. Come to think of it, how long have you been lying to yourself? I wonder how she would feel if she saw you now. Azazel made the projector run, causing Raynare's entire body to tense up. The screen fully decoded the image, showing an adult woman much like Raynare carrying a little girl in her arms as they played. The happy moment was abruptly interrupted when the doors of their hut began to be slammed loudly. Get out of there. We're on to you, you damned witch. Raynare could feel her skin bristle after hearing the mob of peasants. The woman and girl's happy expression changed completely after hearing the angry calls that were muffled by the loud banging that was about to break down the door. Raynare couldn't help but stand up again, but this time Azazel didn't hold her back as she was too focused on the screen. Why do I have to watch this? Stop the tricks and turn that thing off at once. This time Raynare didn't look angry, but frightened. I could, but I'd rather not. Azazel crossed his legs as he continued to watch the screen, as if he were in a movie theater. Listen to me, Raynare. No matter what happens, no matter what you hear, don't walk out of here. Raynare's fear seemed to be overcome by her anxiety as she took several steps forward, watching the screen with an expression coated in melancholy. Mom will love you forever, my child. Never doubt that. The woman stroked her daughter's face once more before burying her under a mound of straw, though little Raynare was still able to see everything that was going on. And the peasants believe that the drought of the crops is due to a spell of your mother's, then they come into your house very furious. Unfortunately for Raynare, she was a fallen angel who never specialized in anything. She simply wanted to live among humans as a normal woman, but her own ex-husband betrayed her. It was a good idea to kill her ex-husband. He was surely tainted by a witch's curse. Do the same to the daughter and the mother. Let's burn the whole family of monsters. Raynare could only watch in silence as the mob towered over her mother and began to beat her relentlessly, causing blood to dress much of the ground where she stood. A few drops even reached the clump of straw where the girl, who was watching everything in complete horror, was hiding. The deadly beating was silenced by the characteristic sound of metal, a moment that transformed Raynare's melancholy into absolute pain. Raynare spat out a large amount of blood, and her gaze slowly lowered as she noticed that someone had plunged a knife into her chest. That didn't stop there, as the same guy continued to stab her several times until she simply couldn't take it anymore. The mother's blank stare focused on her daughter one last time. Despite everything that was happening, despite the fact that she was on the verge of death, she was able to smile at her daughter one last time. The projector stops at that very moment, forcing Raynare to take several steps backwards at the same time as a face covered in pain and suffering made presence on her. Stop this. Her voice came out as a whisper, but it was loud enough for Azazel to hear. I'm not going to stop until you tell me who you really are. Stop this. The cry on the verge of tears made Azazel rise from his seat. I'm not going to stop until you accept the damn reality, Azazel exclaimed as he hit the table hard. If you don't stop now, I'm going to kill you. Why don't you try? I'm going to kill you all, just like they killed your mother. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Raynare grabbed the sword again and came as fast as possible to cut him in half, but Azazel dodged it without any trouble and gave her a strong blow in the abdomen that made her spit saliva. Raynare fell to the ground, being watched by Azazel, who was clearly already getting bored of this. You were not born to cause pain, suffering, and death. You are simply a hurt child who misses her mother. That's how you were, that's how you are, and that's how you will be if you don't decide to change now, Azazel commented, placing the sword on the table once again. Raynare could only rest her face between her legs, barely able to hold back her tears. Though that devastating moment faded into the background when Azazel extended his hand to her, a gesture she hesitantly accepted. What the hell are you doing here, Azazel? I've been looking all over for you. A man with straight white hair, purple eyes, wearing a violet beret and a doctor's gown appeared on the site, catching both of their attention. I was working, Shemhazai, Cotter commented as he folded his arms, earning a rather peculiar look from his friend. I mean it. Azazel immediately raised his hands in defense as he noticed that Shemhazai didn't seem to believe a word he was saying. Whatever. We have something much more important now. There was another attack on the church. We need your help to solve some riddles. Azazel couldn't help but look at him with great boredom. You really need my help. The cotter was reluctant to do any more work, earning a big sigh from Shemhaza's. "Ah, shit, fine, I'll go," Azazel exclaimed with clear annoyance as he made his way to leave the place. But just before the elevator closed, Azazel had a few last words for Raynare. "Take this time to think of a correct answer," he commented, only to have the grates close immediately. Raynare stood there without saying or doing anything after seeing that she was completely alone. All she did was focus her gaze on the sword. The fall did not think twice and grabbed the sword. The weapon hit hard against the walls and the bars. The desperation to escape from the place was more than evident, but the place did not receive any scratches. "Shit!" Raynare shouted in fury as she fell backwards to the ground and the sword bounced to her side. "I can't use magic, the walls are extremely tough," thought the fallen aloud as she pulled herself together. "What is this place?" Her moment of reflection was interrupted when her gaze stopped on the large magical circle that functioned as a screen. The image of her mother was still there, so the fallen couldn't help but feel a little bad. That feeling faded into the background as she slowly approached the image. "I'm sure you can do anything you set your mind to." Rayna's distant words began to pound in her mind as she approached the screen. "You don't need to save people for me to be proud of you. You're already my hero." A smile emerged against her will as she placed a hand on the screen. Her tears were not long in coming as she sobbed, staring at the image of her mother. "My daughter, this is your home. This is your family. They may be wrong someday, but don't stop believing in people. If this ceases to be your home, then find another place to build a family. And no matter how far away we may be, I will always be in your heart to comfort you." Raynare's tears intensified as did her sobs, unable to take her eyes off the screen. Meanwhile, in another place far away. "What is a renegade demon?" Asia asked with mild interest. The young woman was sitting on the couch as she took notes. Issei was next to her and was sitting the same way. On the other couch sat the rest of the nobility of Rias as they listened as their mistress instructed the two newly reincarnated. Renegade demons are all those who defied their master's orders. They become monsters because of the cursed pieces due to the fact that they broke the pact with their master or mistress. Issei wanted to show that he was a little ahead on that topic, but it didn't come out so well. He forgot an important point. Ria's words made them both look at her. Renegade demons transform into monsters not by disobeying their master, but by killing him. Though, of course, both actions can fall under the same formula, and both are considered the worst crime a slave can perform. Rias explained, receiving a quick nod from Issei. "So, that means a renegade demon doesn't necessarily transform into a monster. That's a good tip." Issei concluded in his thoughts, performing a slight nod to himself as he began to scribble down the newly acquired information. Sorry to interrupt, but I need Issei-kun for something important." Kiba stood up from his seat, drawing everyone's interest. "Can you explain to me what this is about?" The redhead consulted with much curiosity. "Issei-kun wants me to train him to know how to counter enemies with swords." That answer made Issei look at him with much confusion. "Did I say that?" "Hey, I mean, of course I said that." Issei stood up from his seat with a strained smile. "How come I could forget?" she concluded as she rubbed her hair somewhat sheepishly. Rias debated whether to let it go or not, but it didn't take long for her to make a decision. "Very well, it is true that my precious slave must become more powerful. I'll let you do that, but Asia will give you the lesson notes you skipped." "I have no problem with that." Issei nodded instantly, then took his leave along with Kiba. Once they were both a bit away from the old building, Issei couldn't help but give him a smile covered in complicity. That was a very good excuse. "Not a problem. Besides, I'm really going to have to help you out for what's coming." The blonde's response impressed Issei greatly. "So what's next?" Before he got any answer, Kiba grabbed his arm the moment he created a magic circle at his feet. "Right now you'll know." Issei couldn't help but close his eyes tightly as the large glow of the magic circle spread everywhere. "Shit, I'm still not used to moving like this," Issei thought aloud as he opened his eyes. His expression took a 180-degree turn as he realized where they are. "This is a mansion," shouted the young man energetically as he saw the ostentatious place that were covered with red carpets and decorations. That wasn't the only thing there, as there were a lot of flags to be found in the place, and almost all of them had the Gremory insignia on them. That was more than enough to know where they are. "Welcome to Gremory Manor." And as if that wasn't enough, the tall, red-haired man slowly descending the stairs confirmed where they were. "Thank you so much for having us, Sirzech Lucifer." Kiba bowed, causing Issei's eyes to widen greatly. "Wait," he thought, mimicking his partner's action as quickly as possible. "This Sirzech guy is the Demon King." Sweat and nervousness soon broke out on his face as he remembered the importance of the 4 Demon Kings. "The pleasure is mine for having you here, so stop that." Sirzech smiled kindly at them as he waved his hand dismissively, indicating that they abandoned their bow. "As we spoke before, here I came along with Hyoudou Issei." Kiba pointed at the young man, and Sirzech's interest was not long in coming as he looked at the man. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Demon King." Issei gave another bow, earning a nervous smile from Kiba. "Likewise, Hyoudou Issei. I see my sister has gained a very interesting new partner." Those words made Issei look at him in utmost surprise. "He's the Butchu's brother." Issei couldn't help but feel even more nervous after the new information. The chatter and greetings were put on the back burner when someone knocked on the door behind them. Just then Issei noticed the large number of maids in the place. One of them opened the door, revealing a girl slightly younger than Issei who possessed blonde hair parted in 2 pigtails and pretty light blue eyes. "Now that Miss Ravel has arrived, I'm sure we can get this meeting started," Surzech commented. Ravel? I'm sure Mr. Phoenix had mentioned that he had his sister and his nobility and she had the same name. Issei was quick to tie up the dots, as the young girl was very similar to her brother. "First of all, it is a pleasure to see the Demon King and the 2 guests." Ravel gave a very extroverted bow, making it quite clear that she belonged to the nobility. But that moment was put on the back burner when she raised her face again, revealing a completely serious expression. "I think it would be more appropriate to start this conversation in a more private place." End of chapter. Actually, no. There is still one more scene below. This was a chapter to delve deeper into Raynare's life and kick off what will be the main focus of this arc. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, I already have a Patreon. You can look me up as Giantzine. It's not a site where I only serve as a place for you to donate to me, but it also serves as a means for me to make all sorts of announcements and updates regarding my stories. There's no place that keeps you more informed than my Patreon. That aside, it's time to close with this final scene. Thank you very much for reading. Azazel entered the room, and the first thing he saw was how the sword was lying in the middle of the room. The second thing he saw was how Raynare was sitting in one of the corners with her knees covering her face. "Did you try to escape?" Azazel asked, taking the sword carefully. "I did, but it's impossible." Raynare raised her face and the cotter showed for the first time some surprise as she noticed that the fallen's eyes were covered with tears. "So, have you made a decision yet?" Azazel asked her, watching as the woman slowly stood up. "You're right, I don't enjoy killing people. I'm not a liberator either." She accepted the fact with a downcast look. "I do it because it's the only option. Because I don't want anyone else to suffer what I had to suffer." "I understand your point of view, but didn't you ever think that maybe you were wrong?" Azazel commented, slowly approaching. "Didn't you ever think that the best option was to end up bringing us together instead of tearing us apart?" "I suppose so, but it's always easier to destroy everything." Azazel finished her thought as he stopped in front of her. "If it's my help you want, I'm going to help you." The fallen clarified, earning a slight smile from Azazel. "That's all I wanted to hear," clarified the cotter with satisfaction. "And as I said before, I will keep my end of the bargain and give you what you seek." Azazel held out the sword in front of her, causing Raynare to look at him with much confusion. Power, a look that became even more confused after hearing that word. So, there was only one way to react to such a situation. "Excuse me, these are very serious accusations. Are you sure about this?" Azazel watched her carefully. Both he and Raynare were in his personal office in the tower, or rather, where he kept all the sacred gears. "I was one of the first to enter their ranks, and also one of their many generals. Cockabeel sought me out personally to join him." Raynare showed no hesitation after her words, receiving a slight nod from Azazel. "Very well, I'm going to believe you. Besides, it's true that Guy has always had some remorse for ending the last war abruptly." Azazel commented, receiving a negative from the fallen. "Actually, that doesn't matter much to him. What he really cares about is the time that has elapsed between that war and the long period of peace we are going through. Cockabeel is completely obsessed with blood and mass slaughter." Those words made Azazel's brow furrow for a second. "Bottom line, he's completely insane." Azazel rubbed his chin, then looked at her with interest. "By the way, can you tell me anything about the other members? I've never shared much with the others. I can only tell you that they are all either fallen angels or renegade priests. The difference lies in the fact that many joined Cockabeel not for the pursuit of war, but for the power they could gain." Raynare's explanation seemed to be enough for Azazel, and this showed as he placed his feet up on the desk. "So, this group is covered with insane people and exiled priests who have extremely radical thoughts." Azazel thought aloud, then gave a slight nod. "That's enough information. Thank you very much for sharing it with me," he concluded, sketching a slight smile. "In that case, can I ask you a question now?" Azazel looked at her curiously after her request, something that was enough to perceive that he wanted to listen to her. "Why are you giving me the chance to gain power?" Raynare emphasized her words as she raised the golden sword with reddish edges, receiving a foxy grin from Azazel. "A couple of hours ago a group attacked a church and stole all the sacred gears that were in the place. They didn't leave anyone alive." Azazel's response caused Raynare to look at him with much confusion. "But, from what I understand, Cockabeel wasn't planning on making any more moves for a few months." "Exactly." Azazel's immediate response caught the Fall's interest. "That means you guys aren't the only terrorist group that's stirring up trouble. And, in fact, from the movements made and the absolute destruction they are carrying out in their wake, it gives me to understand that it is an even much more dangerous organization than the one you belong to," Azazel commented as he leaned forward. "That is why I empower you. I believe in your potential, and we need as many members as possible so we can withstand what's coming." "You say a war is about to start?" Raynare asked, somewhat shocked. "Heh, a war." Azazel couldn't help but chuckle, a chuckle that was put on the back burner due to his gaze turning completely dark. "You can call a one-sided genocide a war." Those words made Raynare's skin crawl. "Is this group that dangerous?" Azazel couldn't help but lower his gaze after the question. "I'm not so sure, but they don't seem to be focused on angering angels or demons. All of their attacks focused on looting sacred gears. That's something that gives me a very bad feeling." concluded the man with a grim look on his face. Yet, that grim look changed to the ever-relaxed one from one second to the next. But if we prepare, we won't have much trouble. I've already assigned you to a recent group I formed. The guys are pretty cool, so I'm sure you'll be able to integrate into the group right away. I also have a house for you. Raynare was barely able to catch the keys when it was thrown to her. The group is already waiting for you in Hoodwood's artificial forest. He added as an afterthought. And how will you deal with Cockabeel? The woman asked with much interest. I can only assure you that, if you're not lying to me, no one will lay a hand on you in my territory. Azazel was as relaxed as ever, but his sentence had been more than blunt. Raynare couldn't help but nod somewhat awkwardly, then walk away. Let me tell you one last thing before you go. Raynare turned her gaze just before leaving the vault. Azazel's gaze caused a shuddering chill to progressively expand over every inch of her body. I'm not a fan of third chances. Azazel's eyes narrowed dangerously. Do you understand what I mean? Issei, Kiba, and Ravel were in the Demon King's office, who was watching them in complete silence. Before we begin, it would be best to explain the details to Hyoudou. Surzech broke the silence, receiving a quick nod from Miss Phoenix. As you may already know, my brother is the eldest and is the one who stands as the successor of the Phoenix clan. This title, the great lineage and the power that comes with being of the Phoenix family, was poisoning his judgment since he was a child. Issei had the intentions of interrupting to refute, but the fact that Kiba had taken his arm caused him to remain silent. From what I understand, you had an encounter with him. He most likely seemed like a reasonable person to you, but he's far from that. Ravel couldn't help but lower her gaze with slight sadness after remembering her brother. My parents never intended to fill him with narcissistic ideas, but the upbringing wasn't the best, and the fact that he had great power inherited from birth didn't help either, so that he wouldn't become hopelessly arrogant. My parents tried to correct his attitude, and, in fact, it seemed to have worked, but the truth is that it did not. My brother ended up becoming much worse than hopelessly arrogant. Ravel's hands clenched tightly after remembering a certain moment in particular. You can take a short break if you want. I still remember that you had a hard time telling me about it. Surzech commented empathetically as he placed a hand on her shoulder, receiving a quick negative from Ravel. Thanks for your concern, but I came much more prepared this time, replied the youngest Phoenix daughter with a slight smile. Seeing that my brother had become a man worthy of the clan, my parents were pleased and granted him the privilege of becoming king of his own peerage at the age of 12. Even I was proud of him, so I decided to be his first Inquisition. But then, Ravel's voice faded noticeably, and her eyes stopped sparkling, something Issei noticed instantly. Ravel clutched her dress tightly, remembering that fateful day. A little over 3 years had passed since that moment. My brother had managed to complete his peerage. Until that moment I had no idea who Razor Phoenix really was. My brother was no longer hopelessly arrogant, but neither was he that thoughtful brother and role model I saw in him. Ravel's tears threatened to roll down her cheeks at what she was about to say. I wanted to surprise him after he completed his first battle in the raiding games. That's why I sneaked into his bedroom and hid in his closet. At first I was very confused to see her enter the room with her slaves and put a magic lock, so I decided to stay silent. At that moment, Ravel's tears began to fall without end. I discovered that he had become a monster. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. Everyone else was just a trophy or something he could entertain himself with. I only needed to watch him for about 5 minutes as he raped and abused his slave girls to the point of leaving them on the verge of death to prove it. Ravel's voice was instantly lost, and her constant sobs made it quite clear that she could not continue speaking. I can't believe it. The shock in Issei soon fell on his shoulders like a bath of cold water, as he lowered his gaze. That's why we need your help, Hyoudou. Kiba has been trying so hard during this time, but Miss Ravel barely found enough courage to tell us the truth a few months ago, so we don't have enough time to prepare properly, clarified the Demon King earnestly. But if the Securite is on our side, if Issei-kun is with us, then the chance of victory increases notoriously. Kiba rested a hand on his friend's shoulder, causing Issei to look at him in clear dismay, as he still couldn't digest the information completely. This really sucks. Issei placed his hands on his head. If that guy manages to marry Butchu and the others, they will most likely suffer a fate equal to or even worse than their peerage. Issei focused his gaze on Ravel suddenly. Can't you make a trial or something? There's no better clue than the scars of your companions, Issei exclaimed with some hope, causing Ravel to look away. Do you think my brother didn't think of that option before? He forces them to take Phoenix tears so that there is no trace of their actions, Ravel commented under her breath. But you're their daughter too. They have to listen to you, Issei exclaimed with his nerves on edge. I can't do that. There's no clue, and even if my parents listened to me, everyone would just see this as a desperate attempt to take first place in the line of succession. Ravel shouted back, then trembled with great fear. Besides, I don't know what my brother could do to me if he finds out I'm plotting against him. Those words made Issei shift his pleading attempts to someone else. And what about you? Didn't you think of something other than combat? I'm sure you can do better with all the power that rests on your shoulders. Surzech just looked at him seriously after his clear insinuation of treating him as useless. Issei-kun, relax. Kiba noticed this too, so he tried to calm him down. The only legal way to snatch Rias and the other pledges is through a battle just before the votes close. I'm sure Razor will agree to fight both of them at the same time because of his overconfidence and arrogance. But there must be another way. Issei interrupted him, causing Serzech to close his eyes. There isn't. You're his brother, and I'm also the Demon King. Serzech opened his eyes, forcing Issei to shut up after noticing the dangerous gleam in them. I love my sister, I love my family. But I also love all demons, I love my people. And as Demon King, I cannot impose family whim over my work. Serzech's solemn look changed to a sad one. I could intervene directly, but that would only make for great friction between various major clans when they sentence my act as tyrannical. I've already lived through a time where many clans were against the Demon King, and believe me, it's not pleasant at all. Is it that big of a deal? A possible war just because of a marriage? Issei couldn't help but lean back on his seat with a defeated expression. The situation is much more complicated than it seems. Illegally splitting the union of two such important clans is not the only problem. What is really problematic lies in the fact that pure demons who can bear children nowadays is really scarce. Denying that privilege to the heir of a clan for a simple whim is really serious. We're talking about demons running the risk of becoming extinct, and if the Demon King doesn't follow the rules for survival, then who will? Those last words completely sentenced the debate, and Issei had no choice but to accept reality. An awkward and cutting silence covered the Demon King's office for several seconds, until Issei decided to take the word. How much time do I have to prepare? Serzech and Kiba smiled after hearing his final verdict. We have a month, replied the Demon King. Meanwhile, back in Grigori. So she's only alive because Hyoudou Issei didn't want to kill her. Azazel thought as he rubbed his chin with great interest. On top of that, the brat is counting on the boosted gear. This is really fascinating. A rare smile emerged from the face of the leader of the Fallen as he materialized a small magic circle over his ear. I need to find a way to be able to talk to him. Issei sneezed loudly, causing his two friends to look at him with great confusion. Hey, be careful not to stain the leaves. It was really expensive, Matsuda exclaimed seriously. Anyway, his two best friends fell completely silent after noticing that Issei was still on the first page, being that they had been together for almost an hour. Are you all right? Madohama asked with much concern. Sorry, I can't concentrate right now. Issei stood up, startling his two friends. I'll see you later. Matsuda and Madohama looked at each other with a raised eyebrow. Maybe he confessed to some girl at the club and she turned him down. I don't know, dude. It seemed like something deeper. Well, we better not bother him for the time being. I agree. Issei walked silently through the streets of Kyoto, his expression indecipherable, impossible to explain. It was simply impossible to tell what he was thinking right now. The protagonist advanced through the dark city with more ease than usual thanks to his demon vision to which he had recently finally been able to get used to. Taking advantage of the fact that the journey was long, Issei decided to make a quick call to his comrade in battles, and now, deep secret. Hey Kiba, it's me. The crestfallen tone of voice was instantly noticed by the blonde, who couldn't help but feel a bit worried. What's wrong, Issei-kun? Kiba set dinner aside to listen to his companion's concerns. What if Ravel is really just looking to slander Razor? What if she's just looking to get her brother disinherited so she can be first in line? Issei began to walk slower after his questions. Hey, Kiba paused for a short second, watching as the waiters in the restaurant came and went. I understand that you're very worried. I understand that it's easier to think that way, but both you and I know it's not true. The blonde took the chopsticks and began playing with the noodles. Ravel was raised by Serzech's wife. I can't tell you the details, I only understand that it was because of political things. I can assure you that Ravel would never lie out of simple greed. She's not a girl who would do something like that. Kiba commented with great seriousness, then dropped the chopsticks. Besides, do you remember how she felt at the time of narrating the story? Do you think all that could have been faked just like that? I know, but Issei couldn't help but sigh as he placed his hands in his pockets. It's all too complicated. We only have a month. We're screwed. Issei's last words came out with a grunt, causing a sympathetic smile to cross Kiba's lips. I understand what you're getting at. Seeking further help is impossible, as we have no evidence and people could turn against us very easily. You know, there are many royal families who want the position of Demon King and would be willing to do anything to get to that position. And as if that wasn't enough, the only ones who are really trustworthy are part of the Gremmery family. The Citri are also close friends, but marriages between families belonging to the Demon Kings is forbidden for a simple fact of not concentrating so much power in the same heir, both for the political side and for the great hereditary abilities it would obtain. Kiba's explanation caused a slight smirk to appear on Issei's face. Don't you think the Butchu would be happy to marry with her cousin or something? Such a strange occurrence brought out a slight chuckle from Kiba. It's amazing how you find the time to make a joke even at times like this. The blonde's smile returned to his usual expression. I think it goes without saying, but pairing up between family members is strictly forbidden. Bottom line, we're screwed. Issei found another one of his witticisms, but this time it didn't really amuse either of them. It's just you and me, Issei-kun. Kiba closed his eyes to thereby restrain the sigh of despondency. In that case, let's become unstoppable. Unlike what Kiba expected, Issei was quite excited. You said earlier that we could train after the academy, but I'm willing to start first thing in the morning. he commented with conviction as he clenched his fists tightly. All right, see you tomorrow at 5. Hiba couldn't hide his smile at the protagonist's great determination. Once the small magic circle disappeared, Issei's face returned to his usual expression. The protagonist stopped in front of his house, raising his gaze to the night sky. And, silently, a great promise was raised as well as his fist as he pointed upwards. I'm going to save you, but you, and all of her. The hope of forgetting Yuma-chan through Rias was once again present, though this time his mind was much more focused on saving all of his comrades. If he could get Rias to notice him, he could consider it a double prize once he managed to save her. Yes, he at no time doubted that he was going to do it. He wasn't going to allow himself to doubt. His parents shared dinner with him, and immediately noticed that their son was covered with conviction. It was rare to see their son so determined about something, but they were evidently happy to see that the fruit they had worked so hard to harvest was now ripening. And as was usual every day, Issei helped his mother wash up before going to bed, receiving a kiss from her who wished him the best of dreams. A quick greeting to his father followed next, being that the man of the house always looked very focused on his paper once dinner was over, though of course he had no trouble answering his son's greeting with a smile. Issei lay down on the bed, and the first thing he did was look at his arm, or rather, how bristly his skin was. Starting tomorrow, a real challenge begins. Those were Issei's last words before falling asleep. A sleep that would be peaceful and relaxing to replenish his energy as much as possible. Or so he would have wished. His eyes suddenly opened and his lungs gasped for breath after distinguishing that he was enclosed within a sea of immense flames with a height and density that seemed to have no end. Why, what is this? Issei was barely able to formulate word after observing the extraordinary panorama in which he found himself. Am I dreaming? This is no mere dream. Issei's surprise increased even more after witnessing a gigantic figure burst through the flames until its figure became fully visible. Oh, a dragon! Issei exclaimed in complete surprise the moment he took a step back, feeling really small in the face of the size and aura he emitted. That's right, I am the dragon that resides within the boosted gear. I am the Welsh dragon, the dragon celestial and of domination. My name is D-Drag, and you are my bearer. D-Drag introduced himself with a serene tone, though the great pride behind his powerful and imposing tone caused Issei to take another step back. Are you locked inside my body? Is this not a dream? Issei continued with his questions, feeling increasingly overwhelmed. There's no need to get so uptight, we're battle partners. I've always tried to communicate with you, but you only now have enough power to be able to hear me. D-Drag paused for a short second, studying Issei's body with his gaze. But you're still very weak, brat. He added as an afterthought, causing Issei's fear to turn to rage. I know, that's why I'm going to undergo high-level training. I have to get stronger to save the Gremory brat and your demon friends. I know all about your life, your ambitions, your shortcomings. We've been sharing the same body since your birth. Issei was surprised at that tidbit of information, as that imposing dragon seemed to be aware of everything. That's what caught my attention. At first, I was furious that my bearer is a puny degenerate, but now you possess a determination I have rarely felt in my bearers. D-Drag's words didn't sit too well on Issei, who couldn't help the twitch of his eyebrow. Am I to take your words as a compliment or insult? That question caused D-Drag to let out a small laugh that forced him to take cover as the fire in the place got a little out of control. I like you, brat. You may be very weak now, but I'll do my best to make you better and better understand the boosted gear. The celestial dragon's smile grew wider at what he was about to say. I will help you accomplish your goals. That way, we'll both continue on our way along the way of domination. Besides, I can't accept that my bearer is a weakling either. Issei completely ignored the last words. He probably would have been very upset at being insulted once again, but this time he paid much more attention to their first words. Any help is welcome, especially if it comes from a celestial dragon. Issei extended his fist forward with a toothy grin, a gesture that impressed D-Drag a bit. As your bearer and battle partner, I promise I'll give my best to accomplish our goals, I swear. D-Drag's surprise slowly subsided until he finally answered him with a slight smile. That's gratifying to hear, replied the dragon with sincerity as the flames began to get more and more wild. I hope those aren't empty words, Hyoudou Issei. The protagonist hit the alarm clock very hard, but immediately realized that it was barely 4 a.m., so it hadn't even gone off. That was just a dream. Issei grabbed his head with a mixture of astonishment and confusion on his face. It wasn't a dream, brat. Issei nearly fell out of bed when the gauntlet materialized without his authorization. This thing could talk, Issei exclaimed in slight fear as he began to shake the gauntlet vigorously. I'm not a thing, brat. You'd better watch your tone. D-Drag looked slightly displeased after saying those words, causing Issei to pause. Wait, are you D-Drag? You can talk through the gauntlet? Issei asked very curiously. I can also speak into your mind if the situation warrants it. The gem in the gauntlet glowed the moment he spoke. Are you serious? That sounds amazing. The sincerity Issei demonstrated in his tone caused D-Drag to clear his throat. If that surprises you, then wait until you see all that you can do with my incredible power. You will become one of the most powerful beings in this world. D-Drag's proud and cheerful tone was not long in coming, as his new bearer seemed to hold him in very high regard, something that very rarely happened. You're not kidding, I'll be powerful enough to defeat Razor, Issei exclaimed with much excitement. You will do much more than that, Brett. You must only listen and abide by my teachings. Ddrake's proud tone deepened even more after those words. But before we begin the arduous training, I'd like to tell you something. This is mostly advice, you can take it however you want. Issei couldn't help but get serious after hearing that the dragon's tone had completely changed. Any advice is always welcome. Issei nodded to himself, thinking he was going to give her some kind of advice to get better faster. Don't tell your mistress that you let that fallen angel escape. Issei's look turned to a completely puzzled one after hearing those words. I understand that you trust her, and indeed she seems to be a reasonable person. But no one lets such a dangerous enemy escape because they are sentimentally compromised. If you seek reparation or to clear your conscience with her, you may only find a very painful punishment for not doing such an important job. It is best that you keep that information to your grave, unless that person you wish to tell is completely trustworthy. Issei did nothing but remain silent after those words. Drake just watched as his bearer bowed his head, being visibly sad after remembering that woman. Thank you for telling me, I'll keep that in mind. A few minutes later, in an unfamiliar place. Apparently, Rias has already told you about me. It's good to save explanations, that way we'll get started faster. Sona adjusted her glasses as she diverted her gaze to Kiba. What kind of training together do you want to do? First of all, I want to thank you for agreeing to our request. Issei-kun was just barely introduced to the supernatural world, and I thought it would be a good idea for Genshiru-san to join us due to being in the same situation. The blonde explained his plan, leaving Sona to debate for herself. It's admirable that they want to become stronger because of Rias, and while it's a good plan, it's all up to Saji. Sona fixed her gaze on her slave, watching as he took several steps forward. I don't have any kind of problem. Though I must say that of all the possible people who could be reincarnated, I definitely didn't expect that to be you. The blonde's words were somewhat malicious, and it was easily noticed by Issei. Are you implying that I wasn't worth reviving? Saji merely scoffed and then smirked. Kiba, at first I thought it wasn't a very good idea to bring this idiot here, but now I've changed my mind. Issei clasped his hands together and his knuckles cracked as a clearly fake smile came across his face. You want to fight, Hyoudou? Fine by me. After all, they used 4 pawns to revive me. Saji sketched a cocky smile as he raised both hands very proudly. That means I have 4 times more potential than you, he exclaimed with great jubilation. Saji, Rias needed to use all 8 pieces to revive him. His mistress's words made all of Saji's pride and arrogance vanish. And please stop making a fool of yourself. Remember that you are representing me and my family, she added somewhat warily at the end, finishing sentencing the blonde completely. You're right, Sona-sama. I'm sorry, Hyoudou. His apology was forced, but still Issei didn't have much trouble accepting it. It's fine that you want to train, but don't be late for the academy. None of you. Sona's eyes flashed dangerously the moment she adjusted her glasses. Is that clear? Yes. Everyone responded in a military pose, receiving a satisfied nod from the woman, who disappeared in a magic circle. By the way, what is this place? Ever since we arrived I've noticed everything very strange, Saji commented as he raised his gaze, seeing that the color of the sky and the trees were really strange, something he had never seen before. That's what I wanted to ask, commented Issei, being in the same situation as Saji. This is the haunted forest. It is a hell site bordering the cursed forest. We must not cross borders into the other forest, as it is the territory of a dragon king, Kiba commented, earning a nod from both rookies, who looked very surprised at the fact that they were in hell. But before either could make mention of that very interesting factor, Issei's gauntlet was summoned against his will. That Dragon King is an old friend. I don't think he'll do anything to us if he knows I reside in the brat, but it would be best not to bother him without having a prior invitation. Both Kiba and Saji looked back and forth in clear confusion. Who said that? Saji was the one who asked the question. It was him. His name is Drake, and he is the Dragon Celestial residing in the boosted gear. We were only able to make a connection today. Issei made the clarifications as he raised his arm to emphasize the gauntlet. The Dragon Celestial. Saji's face turned pale after that mention. I possess the fragment of a Dragon King, so I know something about their categories. Now I understand why it is that they use so many pieces to reincarnate you, the blonde commented with some nervousness. Well, that will save a lot of explaining. I'd like to talk to Vitra, but it's clearly impossible if you only possess a small fragment of his soul. Drake commented simply. Pay attention, Brett. In these days I will teach you all the current available skills you can use. There aren't many and one of them isn't very useful, but it's better to start at the bottom rather than wanting to skip steps. Issei just nodded seriously at the dragon's words. In that case, it's time to begin. Follow me. They both followed Kiba without complaint, slowly making their way into the forest. Of all the companions Sona has, was it necessary to bring this guy? Issei whispered in his ear, showing that he wasn't very willing to collaborate with Saji. It was the best choice. You two are on a very even level, plus Saji is a magic type. Razor will use a lot of ranged attacks, so it's good to fight against someone like him. Besides, Vitra's power is impressive. That last quip made Issei raise an eyebrow in curiosity. After doing some warm-ups, his first confrontation was against Saji. He was initially confident, as they were both rookies, but according to Issei he was much more experienced than the blonde. The blow against reality was really blunt, as Issei couldn't react in time to dodge the fast absorption lines of Saji, who caught him and only needed a few seconds for him to fall to the ground. Is that all? My teammates held on much longer. Saji thought aloud with some confusion. Your magic reserves are really bad, Brett. We should focus on that and your physical strength. D-Drake spoke earnestly, making Issei feel embarrassed that he had appeared so weak after presenting himself as a supposedly very valuable pawn. The absorption lines will do the trick. It's a main point why I chose Saji. As he practices and perfects his power, Issei-kun's body will be able to adapt to store more magic. Kiba commented with a smile. But doesn't excessive magic consumption cause severe headache, even fainting? Saji asked with slight hesitation. I don't care. Issei stood up somewhat wobbly, showing an absolute seriousness that astonished the two blondes. I have to get stronger, so I don't care if you humiliate me about 200 times. Issei's determination was not long in coming, so Saji's surprise was replaced by a smile. In that case, don't come complaining later, the blonde exclaimed, catching a bit of that assurance Issei provided with his solemn tone and expression. That's what I'm talking about, Brett. D-Drake was quite happy at how firm his new bearer looked. Since you really wish to become strong, then do push-ups and squats while Vitra's power consumes your magic. Issei's face turned purple after hearing those words. Wait, I think that's already too much. I hadn't thought of that. That's a great idea, Kiba commented with a smile, causing Issei's expression to change from violet to pale. Why did you have to open your snout, D-Drake? He whispered lowly, receiving a derisive chuckle from Saji. You'd better get ready, Hyoudou, commented the blonde with great delight as the ropes floated around him. Matsuda, Madohama and Asia herself, who had just introduced herself to the class, watched Issei with utter confusion bordering on concern. The reason? It was simple. The protagonist was completely white, looking like some sort of sketch that was never finished, while a ghost had clear intentions of coming out of his mouth. But a small red dragon was holding him so he wouldn't die, or rather, so he wouldn't escape. Luckily for Issei, the magical shortage also meant a somewhat quick recovery, so he pulled himself together completely in the last few hours after having a good breakfast. Conversation with Asia and his best friend served to distract him from the recent stress that had been implanted in his being. He could now perfectly understand those people who claim that lack of knowledge can keep you ignorant, but sometimes ignorance is better than knowledge. Unfortunately, that stress came back to him after heading out of obligation to his club, as the mere presence of the other girls was a constant reminder of how important his training was. And worst of all, he couldn't say a word to them. Issei made a quick trip home to change clothes and take a second quick shower. This time his parents were there, who asked him where he had been. He simply told them that he went for a run to entertain himself, something that pleased Mr. and Mrs. Hyoudou, as their precious son seemed to be focusing on more than just a pair of breasts. The training continued into the afternoon. Issei learned several new things, and chief among them was that Kiba was really fast. He couldn't even follow him with his eyes. He confirmed to her that there are hundreds of enemies who are even faster, so he had to get used to it. Thus the hours passed. The clashes were repeated with large intervals of breaks, especially for Issei, who took advantage of those moments to have D-Drake explain to him the workings of the boosted gear. First he learned that he should not overextend his limits of boosts because the cost would be too great. The next thing he learned was a rare ability called Transfer that transferred all boosts received to a companion. Issei instantly understood why D-Drake said it wasn't a very useful skill, as the idea of transferring your power left you completely vulnerable, but he was left with the idea that there are times and strategies for everything. Finally, he told him about a unique ability of the boosted gear that sounded really interesting, something that certainly excited Issei. Anyway, the dragon warned him that he needed to keep building up his physical stamina and reserves in order to be able to use said ability without fainting in the process. Days passed until a week of training was completed. In those 7 days spent together, Issei, Kiba, and Saji were summoned by their respective mistresses with the idea of fighting for a spot to visit the family kingdom. Although Reyes came out as the winner, Issei and Kiba decided not to attend in order to continue their training, convincing their mistress with that pretext. In the early days, Saji thought that training Issei was a waste of time, as even he had shown a hint of improvement, something that did not happen in the protagonist. And, even if he still continued to think the same, he had to admit that he was quite impressed to notice the great willingness his training partner had for not complaining. Somehow, that made him want to continue training alongside him, as his rock-hard confidence and mettle was transmitted towards him. But Saji wasn't the only one who felt this way, as Kiba felt the same way. The only thing they differed in was that he believed Issei could improve a lot. The next week went by really fast, and Issei had no choice but to accept that he already really liked Kiba. He didn't dare to tease him with that nickname, now he just respected him. The relationship with Saji didn't progress as much, but he could say for sure that he no longer felt uncomfortable or annoyed with his presence. It was only natural for everyone to become closer, as they had spent a great deal of hours together. The third week passed even faster than the previous two. Issei felt that his level was finally improving. He was no longer as physically exhausted and didn't need as many breaks, but he still felt that his magic reserves were being used up excessively fast. 12 seconds longer than the first day, Saji commented with slight amusement, watching as Issei lay on the ground completely pale, hinting that he was about to vomit from the powerful headache that was plaguing him. That's not a bad number. Kiba joined the conversation, where Saji couldn't help but look at him with great hesitation. You don't need to defend me. I know I suck, Issei commented awkwardly as he sat down on the green grass, holding his head with a clear expression of pain. He's right, Brett. If you don't believe me, then it's time for you to use the boosts again. Those words came as a great surprise to Issei, who had been denied using his Sacred Gear's abilities these past 3 weeks. Issei's smile soon appeared on his face, clenching his gauntlet very tightly. Boost, 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 boost. Issei was instantly on his feet after receiving the first 5 raises. Admittedly, he didn't feel much stronger, but there was one key point he hadn't overlooked. I don't feel dizzy anymore. Issei clenched his fists in joy after noticing that his magic reserves had increased drastically after using the augmentations. And that's not all. I can tell this isn't your limit, but the fact that you can do 5 augmentations in a row indicates your progress, Kiba commented with a smile. Hey, Saji. Issei's proud smile changed to a somewhat smug one. What do you say you try draining my magic one more time? Saji simply bowed his shoulders, indicating that he didn't really mind doing it one more time. This time, the blonde was immensely surprised. Almost a minute, he commented as Issei fell butt first to the ground. True, she's still enduring far less than my fellow pawns, but the increase in power is more than clear. He culminated with complete seriousness. Boost. Issei stood up with slight difficulty as another surge was heard. D-Drag, do you think with this? Issei thought aloud as he raised his gauntlet and looked at his hand hopefully. Not yet. You're still too weak, but it will be soon. The dragon's words disappointed him a bit at first, but he quickly regained that titanium determination that was so characteristic of him. In that case, I will continue to strive to the end, he exclaimed with great conviction, drawing a smile from Saji and Volley. That's the spirit, Brett. D-Drag shared his excitement in his own way. Very rarely had he ever been proud of any of his bearers. But Issei had managed to please him almost from day one, so he managed to gain the Heavenly Dragon's respect in record time. Saji left after the long training assignment, so Kiba and Issei were left alone once again. And as they always did these past few days, they both sat down on the green lawn to talk about trivial things before leaving for dinner. But this talk was going to be different. I feel like I've been able to improve a lot more since you've been training with me. I want to thank you for that, the blonde declared with a smile, causing Issei to hand him a toothy grin. You don't need to say that. We'll do whatever it takes to save the Butchu and the others. Issei clenched his fist after the statement. I know I said it before, but you're a good man, Issei-kun. It's reassuring to think that someone you trust is willing to work with me to stop this madness, Kiba commented with complete sincerity. No big deal. Issei rubbed his hair with a hint of embarrassment. That simple act made Kiba look at him more closely. Even his smile disappeared completely. But, you don't do it just for them, am I wrong? Issei couldn't help but stop his action to look at him with great confusion. In these 3 weeks I've noticed how you look at the Butchu. It wasn't many meetings, but I have a thought that. I understand what you're saying, and yes, I want to get her attention somehow, Issei stated bluntly, surprising Kiba a bit by his sheer sincerity. The Butchu is someone amazing, and even if it's hard, I won't give up and I'll do my best to get her by my side. I think the fact that Razor is a son of a bitch is fate's doing, Issei declared with a big smile on his face. It really looks like you're in love with her. It's good to see that you've forgotten your previous experience so quickly. Those words made Issei's smile falter. He still hadn't forgotten her. He would probably never be able to forget Raynare. But that scar would no longer hurt once his so precious and beautiful Butchu was in his arms. Or at least, that was what he thought. Well, to tell you the truth, Issei stammered endlessly, earning a small chuckle from Kiba. There's no need for you to be nervous. In fact, I too think this will be a great step for you to get closer to her. I wish you the best of luck, the blonde commented, then widened his smile even more. In fact, you might even catch Akino and Kaniko's interest. Those words caught his attention. What are you implying by that? Issei asked with a raised eyebrow. You know that harems are legal in the laws of the underworld. The blonde answered him with another question, causing Issei to widen his eyes to the max. Does that mean I could fulfill one of my biggest dreams? Issei immediately stood up and clenched his fists tightly. The spit began to fall from his mouth at the blonde's nervous smile, but that goofy expression didn't last much longer as a short image of Razor flashed through his mind. But I'd be just like that bastard, Issei commented quietly, something Kiba could hear. You and Razor are completely different people, Kiba commented with some seriousness. He didn't want his partner to compare himself to such trash. Still, a harem is a complicated thing. I have to love them all equally, and to be honest, I don't know how to do that. I don't even know if it's something I can control or if it really exists, Issei commented as he rubbed his hair with a very thoughtful expression on his face. After all, in my whole life I feel like I've been interested in several women. But when we talk about love, I think I just... Issei's tone immediately faded. His somber eyes soon revealed who he was about to mention, but Kiba couldn't even keep up with his rapid babbling, so he could only look at him with concern. Is something wrong? The blonde stood up to place a hand on his shoulder, causing Issei to look at him silently. It's nothing, I'm just tired. Issei gave him a weak smile, a smile that didn't convince Kiba at all. Okay, was all he replied, as he didn't want to push him either. In that case, I'll see you tomorrow. I think it would be good if you tried to come back with your own magic circle, since with your boost you possess more than enough reserves. Sounds good. Issei widened his smile even more after discovering that he could now travel on his own without causing further inconvenience. But that facade was completely shattered when Kiba disappeared, and indeed, it was curious to see all that overflowing joy he contained leave along with the blonde. His serious and vacant expression let it all sink in. His eyes drifted to the night sky, and his arms crossed in front of his expressionless, glowing face. What will you be doing out there, Yuma-chan? Beads of sweat trickled onto the grass adorned by the usual morning dew. Raynare stood with her feet wrapped around a tree as she did sit-ups. Her clothing consisted of a short dark-colored t-shirt that exposed her navel, and pants that fit her well-defined legs perfectly. The woman remained with a serene face despite the sweat that was pouring over much of her body, indicating that she had begun her morning workout some time ago. Raynare somersaulted backwards, demonstrating the great agility she had acquired in this month of training. The fall began to stretch her limbs in complete silence as she gazed at the beautiful artificial forest around her. How come you're always so eager to start so early? Raynare's attention drifted to the source of the voice, watching as two figures of men slowly approached her. I guess the woldily stolt isn't in Yao vocabulary. A figure with a clear foreign accent fixed his gaze on the other man as he folded his arms. Are you insulting me, you Chinese piece of shit? I'm not Chinese, I'm a Korean. Are you guys seriously going to start fighting this early? Raynare couldn't help but stare at them with a clear expression of boredom on her face. By the way, Rick wasn't coming with you. Her expression changed after noticing the absence of one of her companions. All we know is that Azazel needed him for something important. I think he talked something about a new member. The man's words drew Raynare's interest greatly. Not exactly. He'll be new Paltnal for a limited time. The Chinese man is right. I think his name was... Shit, I can't remember. Asians have fucking weird names. Both figures took several steps forward, revealing well-toned bodies, though nothing exaggerated, plus the really dark hair that characterized both of them. The Korean folded his arms at Raynare's slightly impatient look. That feeling increased to unprecedented levels when she heard the name of her new training partner. Hyoudou Issei. Chapter 3, Undeniable Proposal. After a hard early morning, classes were finally over and Issei walked with complete happiness while talking with Asia, who had become very good friends in these weeks, even though they had barely had time to talk together. Nisria-sama is very happy that you are trying so hard to improve yourself. The same as for Hyoudou-san, although she is already very used to seeing him try so hard. She's even very happy with me due to the fact that this last week I was able to show a great advancement in my skills. Asia commented with her typical kind smile. Really? That's great. Issei clenched his fists tightly after what he heard. I'm sure when the Butchu completes her peerage, we'll be unstoppable in the rating games. Issei exhaled a large amount of air through his nose after those words, as he was really excited about the idea of being able to fight amicably and meet more people from the supernatural, especially demons like him. Speaking of the rating games, Razor-sama said he would help Ria-sama once his commitment is fulfilled. The young woman stated with a slight blush, causing Issei to stop on the stairs immediately. Has Mr. Phoenix come here more times? Issei asked with some seriousness, something Asia didn't overlook. He did, in fact, he came many times. Asia commented with some confusion at the radical change in temperament his friend presented. Does it bother you that we didn't tell you? She tried to guess the cause of such a change, but she couldn't be further from the truth. Oh ... yeah, I guess so. Issei tried to cover up his little slip with a nervous laugh. By the way, have you talked to him much? The brown-haired man tried to continue the small talk as best he could, resuming his walk. As a matter of fact, I did. Razor-sama is. Asia couldn't help but blush to hell, something that alerted Issei a bit. Actually, I don't think I had told you. He was so kind to me during these 3 weeks, and he's so considerate that I couldn't help but feel certain. Things. Issei's suspicions were almost confirmed after hearing those words, but he had to be sure. So, did he propose to you? Issei opened the door to the exit of the academy, watching as Asia lowered her gaze with a very shy look. He proposed to me joining his marriage. Issei's eyes widened after hearing that answer. At first I wasn't very agreeable due to the fact that we just recently started dating, but he made it clear to me that once he consummated his vows he won't be able to add any other women to his harem. Issei was no longer listening to her. His mind was working too fast to make rational decisions. No, Asia stopped her experience as she raised her gaze, watching her best friend with great confusion. Issei-san. Her doubts became much greater when Issei suddenly grabbed her by the shoulders. Don't. He knew that he should keep calm, but couldn't. That bastard wanted to take away one of his few friends. You should take more time. I'm sure Razor might be hiding something really weird. It's stupid to want to marry a man you've barely known for 3 weeks. Issei's hands clutched even tighter on her shoulders, to the point of starting to hurt her. Don't believe everything he says. Think properly before you choose him. Please. Issei stopped just in time not to give away the secret, realizing he had spoken too much. Though no doubt that concern quickly passed into the background. After all, Asia was sobbing as tears threatened to roll down her cheeks. At that moment knew he'd screwed up. Asia, PLAF. He didn't even have time to apologize as a loud and forceful slap threw him to the ground in full view of all the students who were leaving the academy or passing by. How dare you defame my betrothed like that? Riaz didn't make her anger wait as she wiped her hand with a handkerchief as if she had just finished slapping a dog covered in dirt. Aquino and Kaneko accompanied her, and they also looked annoyed. The opposite case was Kiba, who could only look at his best friend with some sadness. But I can explain. Issei could barely sit on the ground as he cupped his reddened cheek. What do you want to explain? You're ungrateful and a liar, the redhead exclaimed with clear indignation and anger in her tone of voice. Issei-san. Before Issei could say another word, Asia resumed speaking. I consider you my best friend. I thought you'd be as happy as I am about this, but... Issei could do nothing but remain silent as he watched Asia weep endlessly. His hand reached out hopelessly as he watched the blonde run away as she sobbed nonstop. See what you're doing. Riaz watched Issei with clear disapproval. That's what happens when you only look down on yourself. Belittling and slandering the other men in the world won't make women notice you. You'll only make them hate you. Riaz turned away without another word. Disgusting, was all Kaneko said before following her mistress. Just fixating on myself. Issei dropped the hand holding her cheek as a blank look graced his face. I'm killing myself in training for you girls. I'm not doing it for anything else but you. His lapidary thoughts made him oblivious as everyone whispered and looked at him with clear disapproval. Hyoudou, let me give you some advice. Aquino crouched down in front of him, her seemingly friendly smile not boding well. If you go for Asia, for Riaz, or even for me, you should always keep one very important thing in mind. Aquino held up one of her fingers. The first point is that there is no use lying. We are too interested in Razor for you to come along one day and start telling lies. And the second point. Aquino held up another finger, and her smile deepened a little. Besides being tall and handsome, Razor possesses great power, great renown, a great reputation, and a more than enviable heritage. Aquino placed both hands on her knees, her eyes widening to reflect a wide mockery in them. What can Hyoudou Issei offer me? Issei just lowered his gaze, knowing he had none of those things. Aquino didn't say anything else. All she did was silently pull herself together and then leave the place. Issei still looked quite shocked by everything that happened. He brought his hand to his cheek again. That blow hurt a lot more than anyone would think. Issei-kun. To his luck, Kiba was always going to be there to back him up. I know, I shouldn't have opened my mouth. Issei commented remorsefully as he accepted the blonde's hand to stand up. But, you must also understand me. After Matsuda, Madohama, my parents and you, Asia is one of the few loved ones I have. I even care a lot for the other girls in the club, but I care a lot more for Asia. I just couldn't stand it. Issei tried to excuse himself as best he could, receiving a head shake from his friend. At least you knew how to control yourself from saying everything. Otherwise, you'd most likely have to subject to something much worse. The blonde commented, getting Issei to look at him with slight confusion. What do you mean by that? Razor is here. Those words made Issei tense up immediately. I understand that now is the worst time to see him, but we have to make sure he doesn't suspect anything, as I'm sure Riaz will tell him about what you did. Kiba stated with complete seriousness. And what do you want me to do? Go crawling on the floor like a maggot to kiss his shoes and beg for mercy? Issei commented with clear reluctance. There's no need to be so extreme. Kiba couldn't help but laugh nervously at such a surreal example. Just apologize and be done with it. Of course, Issei could never agree with that idea, but knowing that there were no other options, and that this whole imbroglio was due to his fault, he had no choice but to duck his head in front of everyone once he reached the club room, where Razor himself was present, and from his expression, or rather, lack of it, it was plain to see that he was already aware of everything. I'm really sorry, Asia. I shouldn't have said those things. Not to the great Mr. Phoenix either. Issei did his best not to bite his tongue, and that fact earned an air of satisfaction from everyone present. I recognize that you had the courage to instantly go back and acknowledge your mistakes. Razor commented with satisfaction as he embraced Asia, pulling her closer to him. The Phoenix and their women were seated on the couch, except for Riaz, who was judging from the center desk. Still, it's impossible to go unnoticed that you tried to denigrate me in front of one of my women. That's a very serious thing. Razor's smile was replaced by a serious look. Seeing as you apologized, I would like your punishment we spoke of reduced by half, my dear Riaz. Punishment? Issei raised his face to face his butchu, not understanding exactly what they were talking about. All right, then it won't be 20 lashes, it will be only 10. Those words made Issei go completely pale, something they all noticed. That's what you get for nonchalantly insulting and belittling. Kaneko stated, her always stoic expression looking slightly annoyed. Can't we talk this out? Kiba tried to jump to his friend's aid. You know, I think Issei-kun is still very confused about everything that happened to him with Raynare. He's just afraid that... Are you kidding? Riaz interrupted him with a frown. Just because of that insignificant little thing he's already absolved of any guilt. Those words hit Issei as if a large sledgehammer was cracking in his head. Little thing. Insignificant. Issei repeated those words in his head more than once, his widened eyes letting it be understood that he was more than shocked. Little thing. Insignificant. That ridiculous thing took my life, and a big part of my heart as well. Has she forgotten already? Or does she just not care? The ideal image he had built up of his much-cherished Butchu had been shattered in just seconds. I think you're being too rough, Butchu, Kiba commented with some seriousness, as he hadn't found that choice of words appropriate at all either. It's not easy to face something such as. Kiba, I'm surprised that you want to defend him. Riaz interrupted him again. You've lived through much worse and at no point did you complain about it, just like all my other slaves. In the end, Riaz could only manage a sigh. Listen, I just want to rectify him. He has to know that every bad action leads to a consequence. The redhead concluded, and her tone made it clear that she would not accept any further protest from the blonde, so Kiba only deigned to look away. But I think it's an exaggeration. On this occasion, and to everyone's surprise, Asia was the one who jumped to defend him. It was at that moment that Issei finally came out of his torturous thoughts, looking at Asia with pleasant surprise. He recognized his mistake, and besides I'm sure he was just worried about me. I know Issei-san better than most, so I'm sure it was just a bit of shocking news to him. The blonde replied with a smile, then fixed her gaze on Issei. Isn't it? She's right, Issei commented when he finally abandoned the bow. Asia is a very important friend, so I'm just afraid that she'll be hurt again. In fact, I just want to wish you the best, and if you think Razor is the right man, then I'm not going to argue anymore. He concluded with a smile, though those words were actually hurting him. After all, he knew Razor was far from being the man Asia believed him to be. But he had to keep up the facade. He just had to keep up the facade for one more week. Besides, I'm sure Riaz got a little carried away with the punishment because he heard how they insulted his much-loved Razor. Kiba found the perfect moment to say what he really thought all along, causing Riaz to cough awkwardly as a huge blush spread across his face. What do you say, Razor? The redhead tried to deflect as quickly as possible as she called out to her future husband. I'll do whatever my dear Asia wants, Razor commented as he stood up, grabbing the young woman by the waist, who couldn't help but blush deeply at such an act. In that case, I want you to leave Issei-san in peace. Issei decided to leave quickly after that, claiming that he had to continue discussing the training with Kiba. Although that wasn't entirely untrue, the truth was that he wanted to get away from that place as fast as possible. But, unlike before, he didn't want to get away from Razor. He wanted to get away from Riaz. Kiba just watched him silently, listening to the distinctive sound of the straw that Issei was sucking non-stop. His face looked really affected, and Kiba knew the reason. Forgive Riaz. She's really temperamental when messing with the people she loves, plus she doesn't know who Razor really is. Kiba tried to apologize to his mistress, getting Issei to finally lift his face from his empty drink. Don't worry, it's not like I can demand a woman with a golden cradle to understand my pain, or pain in general, either. Issei whispered bitterly, but the words and intentions were more than clear. Yes, it was not good. Not good at all. Regardless, Kiba had no choice but to agree with his friend. They both remained silent for several seconds, until Issei took up the floor again. I think I'll take a little break today. Kiba gave him a hard look. Don't you want to? The blonde paused, though the question was more than obvious. No, I'm going to. It's true that after all this I'm not really interested in getting their attention anymore, but as I told you before, they are very important comrades to me. Now there's also Asia, who is one of the few friends I have. Issei commented, then gave a big sigh at the end. I get it, you're not going after Riaz anymore. Kiba nodded slowly. But anyway, I don't think you should rest now. I understand that those words affected you a lot, but it's not just that. It's also, Issei interrupted him, and his gaze left Kiba in complete silence. At this very moment, Issei looked more vulnerable than a newborn puppy that had been abandoned by its mother. His helpless tone and great insecurity left Kiba perplexed, but said perplexity lasted no more than a second. Listen, we're friends. You can trust me, I'll do my best to help you, replied the blonde with a smile, something that apparently gave Issei enough confidence to continue. I didn't kill her. You what? It was just a simple whisper, so Kiba couldn't help but look at him with great confusion. I didn't kill her. Issei spoke louder as his whole face was plunged in darkness and sadness. I couldn't kill Raynare. Kiba couldn't help but look from side to side after hearing those words, then suddenly came closer. Listen to me well, don't tell anyone else about this. The consequences can be really scary. Kiba whispered with absolute seriousness. He was even sweating a little. Drake told me the same thing. I didn't tell anyone else but you. I did it because I trusted you fully, plus I was supposed to take it off. Although Issei's words sounded somewhat abstract, Kiba understood it perfectly. That means she never really left, right? A sympathetic, even sad smile crossed Kiba's lips as he watched Issei nod slowly. You just wanted to use Riaz as an excuse, as a way to forget her. Not really, I seriously wanted to fall in love with her, I think ... and oh, I was. But after what happened, I just think I should look elsewhere. Issei clarified instantly. He knew perfectly well that recent memories were a very difficult stain to erase. Kiba decided not to answer what he really thought. After all, it was obvious that Issei could love another woman. He held a rather unique pervert side, but behind that he was loyal and, above all, such a protective and kind person that he would catch the attention of many women. But he also knew perfectly well that Issei's real goal would be to fill that hole in his heart until he actually fell in love with his lover, a process that could take a long time, especially if Raynare was still alive. and, obviously, even Issei wasn't aware that was really what he was looking for. If it were, he would feel extremely guilty with himself for wanting to use one woman to forget another. That was exactly why he didn't want to say anything to him. It's okay. Issei looked at Kiba with great confusion after hearing that. There are two remedies for dealing with these problems: face them directly or forget them. Kiba smiled slightly. For the second option, you need to rest and get your mind clearer. Besides, there's no use in continuing to train if your mind is somewhere else, he concluded, earning a smile from Issei. Thank you, Kiba. Comical tears graced his eyes as he took him by the arms. You always understand me, the blonde replied with a smile. Friends are there to help and understand each other, Issei-kun. Although he had a very bad time, the talk with Kiba helped him a lot and now he was feeling better. But he never expected that when he arrived home such a big surprise would be waiting for him. His parents greeted him at the door with folded arms and a frown on their faces, something that really missed him. Something happened? Issei asked with much confusion, watching as his parents glanced at each other once before nodding. Young man, we want to know what you're doing going out so early every day, stated the mother with a stern tone. We know you go to the academy, but then you don't come home until late at night, added the father with complete seriousness. Oh, it's about that. Issei rubbed his hair in some astonishment. I've explained it to you before, I go out to train. Every day. Miss Hyoudou narrowed her eyes with great suspicion. At first we were very happy, but we think this is a very brusque change, Mr. Hyoudou clarified, crossing his arms firmly. And what else would I be doing? Asked the son in a slight sweat. His parents looked at each other for one last time, then spoke at the same time. Drugs. An extremely awkward silence arose between the three of them. What? Issei finally seemed to react, rolling his eyes. If you don't believe me, look at this. Issei unbuttoned his school shirt and lifted up his clothes, revealing a torso not too out of the ordinary. But his parents always saw him come out of the bathtub in just panties, so they knew very well that their son's skinny body was now not so skinny. You accomplished all that in just 3 weeks. Both parents shouted at the same time as they noticed the slight but noticeable changes in their son's physique, as his once non-existent muscles had now taken on a bit of shape. Well, I try really hard. Issei couldn't help but stifle a strained smile, as he was indeed trying hard like few others, but if it hadn't been for the fact that I'm a demon now, I'm sure this result would have taken me twice as long to obtain. He thought with great nervousness, hoping that his parents didn't take that into account. To his luck, they seemed quite amazed at his effort, and the fact that he wasn't into drugs. Yes, especially on that last point. In the end he couldn't help but smile sincerely, as his parents cared a lot about him, even when they really didn't need to. Many would wish they had parents like that, so he would enjoy them as much as possible. With that thought he headed to his room to change, obviating the fact that what happened was far from the surprise he had to deal with. Issei took off the top of his school clothes and threw them on the bed, noting how on a chair his parents had already laid out his casual clothes in case he came in earlier today, which he did. Pants, belt. Issei began to narrate things as he took them in. It was a mania he had since he was a kid. T-shirt, sweatshirt, black feathers. Black feathers. Issei picked up the feather that had fallen on his shoulder with much uncertainty. His gaze automatically lifted. Hello. Azazel, who was leaning against the ceiling with his pairs of dark, majestic wings, greeted completely normally. Obviously, Issei didn't find normalcy at all. What the fuck? Issei tripped over the chair and fell butt first onto the floor, then crawled like a cockroach until he crashed hard into the door. SHHH. Azazel placed a finger over his lips. Do you want to worry your parents? Those wings. Well, what does a cotter want from someone like me? Issei slowly stood up, and his gauntlet activated practically at the second. I see you know something about the hierarchy of the fallen angels. That saves unnecessary explanations. After saying those words, Azazel came down from the ceiling and folded his arms as his wings disappeared. My name is Azazel, I am the leader of the fallen, and I can assure you that I'm not here to cause troubles. In fact, I want to help you. Although the man's words filled him with interest, certainly his distrust was far more powerful than his curiosity. Boost, and how can I trust you? Issei asked slowly, causing a rather unique smile to creep across his uninvited guest's lips. Because if I wanted to do something to you. Issei's eyes widened beyond belief as he felt someone place a hand on his shoulder. His body completely froze as he felt Azazel's icy breath on his ear. You wouldn't even have known. The cotter concluded smugly, then turned away. The moment he raised his hands and walked away, Issei felt the hostile atmosphere return to one of eloquence. But like I said, I'm only here to help you, Azazel exclaimed with a half-smile as he glanced sideways at him, as I still had my back to him. Do you want to hear the proposal of an extremely kind and selfless man like me? Although the evidence that he really did not wish to harm him was more than obvious, Issei continued to hesitate. Hear him out, partner. Both Azazel and Issei eyed the talking gauntlet closely. What do we have to lose? The protagonist fell silent after listening to Ddrag, thinking carefully. Very well. In Issei's tone there was still some distrust. I spoke with Surzech. He told me you were on a training mission to claim his sister, your mistress, as a wife. To do so you have to defeat one Razor, demon high class. Azazel commented, impressing Issei a bit. Apparently, Surzech modified certain details to cover up the real plan. Anyway, Issei thought, then frowned. Why did Surzech tell you about the secret plan? You see, ever since everything that happened almost a month ago, you caught my attention a lot. I won't deny that I was most interested in your sacred gear, but I also find it extremely odd that a man with such a power would not become intoxicated in it, as most of the previous bearers did. Issei looked at the gauntlet after hearing those words, unable to hide his surprise. It's a long story. Just think that almost all of my bearers considered themselves gods the moment they discovered my power. There were very few who didn't become idiots. Diedrag tried to sum it up as best he could, and Issei seemed to understand. Still, it seems very strange to me. Issei fixed his gaze on Azazel with extreme caution. How come he knows I'm someone normal? Normal? You possess a Longinus, a weapon that can kill gods, and you consider yourself someone normal. Very interesting. Azazel couldn't help but chuckle at how he referred to himself. The laughter didn't take long to end, and his relaxed smile changed slightly, causing Issei to tense up a bit. You want me to be honest with you? That's what it's all about. Issei didn't hesitate to answer. Very well. Azazel narrowed his eyes a bit. How do you explain Raynare still being alive when she supposedly died under your own hands? At that moment, tension and coldness covered Issei's body like never before in his life. Don't worry, I didn't tell Serzech. Azazel spoke quickly, knowing that this point troubled him greatly, and rightly so. That woman would certainly have died if it wasn't about you. No one would have forgiven her if she caused so much harm. Everyone would have even enjoyed torturing her in a very twisted way before killing her. Cotter clarified, then placed his hands on his waist. What can you say about that? That I'm an idiot. Do you think you're an idiot? I don't know, I just see someone who gives second chances, Azazel stated, causing Issei's face to harden. I would never give a second chance to someone like her. He clarified instantly. Yes, I understand. Raynare hurt you badly, but we're not here to talk about that. Actually, we are, finished the fallen angel with keen interest and clearly feigned allegory. My proposal is that you can close that chapter of your life, and as a bonus point, you will enter a very special training regimen under my own mandate. Those words certainly caught Issei's interest, and though he tried to disguise it, Azazel saw through it all too easily. There are two remedies for dealing with these problems: face them directly or forget them. Issei remembered his friend's words, causing his fists to clench tightly. I want to face her directly. Those words made Azazel cross his arms. I'll take that as a yes. A few moments later, in an unknown location in England, Azazel and Issei were walking in a truly vast and empty meadow. The wind was whipping with complete rudeness the tall green grass that stood miles away. The protagonist had to admit that it was a rather peculiar sight, as all that could be seen was green on the ground and light blue in the sky. It was a rather unique kind of beauty, but there was another unknown that was haunting him much more. Is this where we will do the training? Issei asked with a lot of hesitation. It's not a bad place, but I'd rather be more cautious. Right now we're heading to Grigori, the city of the fallen angels, El-Qadr clarified, earning a curious look from Issei. If that's the case, then why don't we just teleport there? That answer is simple. Azazel interrupted him, already deducing his question. Grigori has a rather unique structure that prevents direct entry into the city. It used to be a place where only warriors lived, but between the wars and the times of peace we have gone through, those warriors have been greatly reduced and we now have a large number of civilians. In short, using a teleportation limiter ensures that there are no terrorist ambushes that we cannot prepare for. Or at least, that's the initial plan. Issei nodded at his words, though he still felt very confused. And where's the city? I see absolutely nothing, he commented with great hesitation. Right below you. Issei's eyes widened as he received a hard blow from behind from the Qadr, causing him to go through the greenish grass and end up falling backwards into a rather strange sort of giant cube. He barely managed to get to his feet before a pair of spears were aimed at his neck. Reason for the visit? One of the three fallen asked in a gruff tone. He's coming with me. Unlike his new ward, Azazel landed with complete grace and helped him to his feet. Azazel-sama. The three fallen stood at attention after the arrival of the leader of the fallen. We're descending right now. Descend. Issei wondered with utmost curiosity, then staggered slightly as he noticed how the cube began to shake. The metal walls slowly opened, as did the protagonist's eyes. Issei walked up to the armored glass and watched with wide eyes as a gigantic city rose underground while descending at a slow pace by means of a giant elevator. The artificial sky, the huge and tiny magic circles, the lights, the dwellings, the vegetation. Everything, absolutely everything was so magical that it even thrilled him. Welcome to Grigori. Azazel placed a hand on his shoulder, causing him to snap out of his stupor. This is amazing, was all he could manage to say at such a sight, a few simple words that widened the Qadr's smile a little. They both stood in silence for a few seconds to enjoy the view, until Azazel resumed the conversation. Surely you must be wondering how I convinced Serzech to bring you here. Those words caught Issei's attention, and it showed as he fixed his gaze on him. The truth is, it wasn't easy. I spent 3 weeks to convince him. It was really fucking hard. You know, he's a nice enough man, but he's still someone strict and careful, worthy of his title as Demon King. I see, was all Issei replied, turning his gaze at such a visual spectacle. Since you will be my ward for the week, you will live in Grigori until the internship is over. I already have a home for you, and don't worry about your parents or the academy, we've already arranged everything. Azazel held out keys to him with a stuffed puppy that had the address inscriptions of his new temporary home. I guess you really take things seriously. Issei couldn't help but smile at the man's words. After all, he had just told him that he had arranged everything so that he could train in the remaining week without any interruptions. Before I introduce you to your training partners, I'd like to give you a little tour of Grigori, Cotter stated when the elevator finally stopped, stepping down along with Issei. As you can see, people can only go up or down via that elevator. The artificial sky is also a large set of barriers that are guarded by the Cotters, who take turns administering magical energy to it. Azazel began with his explanation as he went into a path that was divided into 9 different ones. Grigori is divided by neighborhoods. In total there are 8. Each neighborhood has its own name and the dwellings are arranged from number 1 to 300. The red road takes you straight to the heart of the city. And what do you do when there is overcrowding? We simply create another neighborhood. We have plenty of space. Also, keep in mind that the supernatural population isn't exactly extensive. We currently have over 22 homes and 124 businesses or facilities of all kinds. The population reaches the modest figure of 8643 inhabitants. Quite a bit more modest than I thought. The funny thing is that a quarter of them are not fallen angels. Grigori is currently a city I thought for unfortunate citizens. That's why the number isn't very large. Obviously, omitting the obvious fact that my species is the most damaged by the constant wars we subjected ourselves to so many centuries ago, and having children is not a simple process. Not simple. Being immortal, the method of reproduction is controlled at will as opposed to humans, and let's just say that people like to live off partying and living crazy lives much more than focusing on having a family. It's a respectable thing. In fact, I'm one of them. I have no problem with that. Everyone lives their life the way they want to. The two continued chatting about trivia until they finally came to a huge and rather striking structure. This is Larabahan, the largest supernatural prison you'll ever find. Azazel commented, noticing that Issei had become interested before the structure. Do they lock up the worst types here? He asked curiously. Actually, no. There are only a few idiots here. The worst ones we execute immediately. The analysis behind that sentence was more than obvious, so Issei was quick to nod and continue his walk alongside the Cotter. Along the way he saw many people shopping in stores or chatting on the road completely normally. If it wasn't for the fact that they were in the damn underground, this could be considered an ordinary village. This is the passage to Robbenheim. We don't use it anymore. Azazel pointed towards a strange subway passageway that led to who knows where. Noticing that the Cotter didn't go on much longer in explanation, Issei spared himself the questions and continued the final journey with his guide. And last but not least, this place is the heart of Grigori, also known as the Tower of Hope. Azazel spread his hands to emphasize the majestic marble tower that towered above them, and just behind it rose a precipice that seemed to have no end, both in depth and length. There you will find the latest technology, the home of the Cotters, and the diplomatic meeting room, as well as other things of lesser relevance. I see, you could say this place is the command center. Issei thought aloud, receiving a slight nod from Azazel. Good afternoon. A man of a very similar age to Issei approached, giving a slight bow with his head towards Azazel. His hair was as dark as night, somewhat short and messy, although what was most distinguishable about his figure was the somewhat bushy beard and his light blue eyes. His clothing consisted of a completely black color, besides it was really light. From the structure of his body you could tell a mile away that the man exercised. Sorry to keep you waiting, the walk took longer than I thought, Azazel commented, then placed a hand on the chestnut man. This is Hyoudou Issei, the newest member of your group. Now Azazel's hand fell on the newcomer. His name is Rick Graham. He will be your momentary tutor for the week. It's a pleasure. Issei extended his hand immediately. Same here. Rick shook his hand with a quiet smile, then fixed his gaze on Azazel. By the way, do you have that? You know my Japanese isn't very good and the other two are even worse. That's true. Issei, the protagonist, watched silently as Azazel placed a small device over his ear. This is an advanced magical translator. It still lacks certain tweaks, but you should have no problem with understanding and talking to others. That's great, Issei replied with a smile. Now he understood that the technological advancement thing was no joke, though this city itself was clear proof of that. Now, I won't take any more of your time. You'll be entering a little late, so give him a light workout for today. Azazel patted Rick on the shoulder a couple of times before walking away. I don't think I've ever met such an eloquent guy, Issei thought aloud. Well, to say I know her is something. Issei lowered his gaze a little. Actually, I don't think I know her at all. Azazel told me about your problems, Rick commented with some seriousness. I know it's hard, but if you want me to be honest with you, the best thing you can do is focus on your near future. The rest you'll figure out as you go along. Although Rick's words were quite complex and perhaps meaningless, Issei could understand them perfectly. He too knew that he had more important things to focus on. But the truth was that he also came here precisely to face his nightmares. Thanks for the advice, but I plan to do both. Issei's words caught Rick's attention, getting him to look at him with slight astonishment. Very well, I'll give you a little smack if I see you stumble, the man commented, sketching a slight smile at the end, a smile Issei shared. I'd be offended if you didn't. Raynare was doing small hops as he hit a magical barrier repeatedly. Not far from her position were those two men she had spoken to earlier, training together. The one with Asian features was using a sickle with a chain, while the other was using a sword made purely of air. Issei arrived next to Rick without making much noise, knocking on one of the nearby barriers, and the sound caught the attention of the men who were training together. The Asian had bright brown eyes, while the American had black eyes. Both had training clothes like the others, except they were more inclined toward white than black. Removing the Asian's hair and pigtails, what stood out most about their figures were the golden cross the American wore and the pocket watch the Asian had slung over his neck. We'll start with training against the barriers. It's something simple, like a boxing machine, Rick commented, perching next to him to teach him. Issei was half lost in the explanation, as he could see the silhouette of a certain woman training behind some trees, so he couldn't help but look away. Understood. Issei finally woke up from his little trance and nodded out of pure inertia. Rick wasn't too convinced that he'd heard him, and it showed as he reached behind the barrier to hold it up. Start with a couple of right hooks. I'll tell you the shape and position you should have. We'll correct from that. Issei nodded, beginning to practice. After a few beats, his gaze betrayed him and he turned his face as he noticed a figure slipping through the trees, revealing a somewhat sweaty Raynare with her hair tied in a ponytail that gave her a rather sizzling look. The two shared a look for a short second. It seemed neither of them knew what to do or say. Although the one who was suffering the most from this uncomfortable moment was undoubtedly Raynare, as she felt how Issei was piercing her with his gaze. Finally, Issei turned his face away and continued his training, as if he had not even seen her, as if she didn't even exist. Rick noticed this, and he wasn't the only one. Did you notice that? The American whispered to his friend under his breath. I think there's a lot of sexual tension between them. You say so? The Korean commented with a tone shrouded in doubt, though his expression continued unchanging. If you ask me, I think they want to kill each other. Yes, that's another option. Tension and awkwardness reigned for the next few hours, so the training became somewhat complicated, to say the least. Eventually, Rick was left alone with his other two friends, watching as night reigned over the place and his other two companions had already left. I couldn't even introduce myself. Neither could you, Chinaman, commented the American, receiving a slight nod from his two friends. Well, and you supposed to tell him will you living this week. The city is new for him, commented the Asian, watching Rick. That's what I had in mind, but he said that he had other plans, Rick replied, causing a rather unique silence to come between the three of them. Does that mean? Yep, that's just it. After 3 weeks, I think I've gotten used to it. Raynare waved the sword to the side forcefully as he advanced through the forest to practice his stance. I never thought it would be so hard to learn such simple movements. She concluded her thoughts, then practiced the thrusts. She stood like that for a couple of seconds, until her brow furrowed. Why the fuck did Azazel have to bring him here? He knows full well that it's impossible for us to synergize well after what I did to him. Her thrust became considerably stronger. Besides, that won't just affect my pace and his, it'll affect everyone else's as well. Hey, PUAFGH. Issei suddenly appeared, and just as he appeared, he also fell to the ground. That was because Raynare gave him a blunt elbow in the teeth. Oh, by the gods. Raynare half turned and covered her mouth as she noticed how Issei lay sprawled on the ground with a split lip. We didn't even spend a day together and you already want to kill me again. The brown man sneered as he spat out some blood. Sorry. Raynare apologized twice in an attempt to boost her credibility as she held out her hand to help him up. But she suddenly knew maybe that was a bad idea, as Issei would never be able to accept her help. The reasons were obvious. Well, it was also my fault for approaching without warning, Issei commented with a slight smile, accepting the gesture. That simple fact made Raynare impressed to the core. I'll get straight to the point, Issei commented as he wiped the blood from his lips. We're disturbing our companions, and I'm sure you noticed it too. Raynare fell completely silent after hearing those words. It's not only that, I also feel that I couldn't perform properly today. As you may know, I didn't come here just to get stronger. I have goals, and I'm not going to let anything or anyone stand in my way, you know what I mean. Not really, Raynare answered truthfully. She didn't know if he was proposing a death match to her right here, or there was some other option. Either way, he would try to avoid a direct confrontation, as she knew perfectly well that she was currently stronger than Issei, and she didn't want to repeat her past mistakes again. What I mean is, let's be nice to each other, Issei exclaimed with a smile, something that undoubtedly surprised Raynare a lot. She had never expected this development of events. That way we won't bother ourselves or those around us. And it'll only be for a week. He continued speaking, then calmed down a bit. After that, I don't think we'll see each other again. We must simply try to live together without making it too difficult. Obviously the past will never be forgotten, but we must not let it get in the way of our goals. Once he finished his speech, Issei tipped his hand forward, smiling a toothy smile. What do you say? Raynare barely needed a couple of seconds to mull over the answer. It was obvious that this was the best option, by far. A faint smile emerged from Raynare's lips as she shook his hand with hers. Very well, let's be friends for this week. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.